Story begins with the sky filled with lightning and a helicopter flying near an erupting volcano. In present, chaos reigns on Zhongshan Road as a bus and other vehicles hurtle forward at breakneck speed. Within the bus, a multitude of passengers are engaged in what seems to be a mass evacuation, each gripping their possessions as if they were precious gold. Amidst the frenzy, a man vents his frustration, recounting the recent underwater earthquake and the eruption of Mount Fuji, which claimed the lives of tens of thousands, and now their own locality is under evacuation orders. Suddenly, the woman seated beside him expresses her concern, mentioning their hasty departure has left her devoid of essentials. She resolves to buy supplies upon reaching Jiangnan City. The man beside her queries if he missed the news, pointing out that the goods in both Walmart and alley warehouses in Jiangnan City have been cleared out. Another passenger interjects, remarking that it's old news, citing the recent phenomenon of Daming Lake drying up in Shenxing and the subsequent emptying of the Da Rundong warehouse. This revelation surprises the woman, who calculates the staggering value of the depleted supplies, likely amounting to hundreds of billions. Suddenly, another voice from behind interjects, correcting the woman that the value of the supplies should be in the tens of trillions. Another passenger joins the conversation, stating that the depletion of supplies and the series of natural disasters are merely superficial. They should broaden their perspective to see that the apocalypse is imminent. Startled, the woman turns to the man beside her, inquiring if it's truly the end of the world. He responds, asking the other passenger if he's joking, because if it genuinely is the end, he admits to looking forward to it, as it would mark the moment of equality among all living beings. Upon hearing the declaration that all living beings were equal, Su Chen contemplated the notion. Even as their world faced its end, he realized there was no true equality among all creatures. Memories flooded back of the disaster he had personally endured. A monstrous creature, emerging from the depths, its maw filled with human bodies, flashed before his mind's eye. Su Chen recollected that in his previous life he was just a humble delivery man, and the horror was etched on his face as he witnessed the grotesque scene unfold. The apocalypse had descended, triggered by the abnormal release of solar activity, resulting in soaring atmospheric temperatures, frequent seismic shifts, and the emergence of monsters that were previously hidden underground. The whole world changed. A new world emerged with a new order, a realm of scarcity where survival meant relentless struggle. In this dystopian reality, people fought tooth and nail for even the most basic necessities, like a pack of instant noodles, and girls were willing to be bitches just to lick a humble ham sausage. Su Chen, now a self-proclaimed phoenix risen from the ashes of an apocalyptic world, reminisces about the time when everyone had to let go of everything. He was reborn from that kind of apocalypse to 1 month before the world turned topsy-turvy. But his reverie is interrupted as someone grabs his arm. It's the same lady from before, her flirtation game strong, trying to snag his attention with a mix of charm and concern. She whispers that what others said earlier has scared her a little bit, her eyes wide with a cocktail of fear and fascination. Yet she's taken aback when the Giga Chad boy, with a polite wave, apologizes to her, telling her that he has more important things to do, and slips away from her grasp. He steps off the bus, leaving a trail of curiosity and unanswered questions, as the doors snap shut. Su Chen raises his gaze skyward, pondering what is the most important thing in an apocalypse. Standing before the Mr. Hippo warehouse, Su Chen remarks to himself that, naturally, the most crucial thing is supplies. As he grabs his uniform, he reflects that in his past life he wasted his time searching for supplies and resolves to be better prepared this time. Upon reaching the entrance, Su Chen is swiftly reminded by the manager that tardiness by even 21 seconds would result in a hefty deduction from his salary. Su Chen quickly apologizes and steps into the warehouse. Su Chen reminisces about his past apocalypse experience where the boss skipped town early, leaving his hard-earned annual salary to dust. So he figures these supplies are his rightful compensation. Just as he's about to make his move, the ground glitches beneath his feet. With a mischievous grin, he suggests they let him take the goods. Extending his arm dramatically, he unleashes a wave of energy, commanding the space to cooperate. As if by magic, the massive racks of supplies begin to vanish, replaced by a reassuring system screen listing rice, cooking oil, and meat, all automatically stored. The racks seem to teleport to a new location, perfectly aligned. The system cheerfully notifies him of more incoming supplies being automatically stored. Like obedient soldiers, additional racks materialize, aligning themselves perfectly with the others. It's as if the apocalypse itself is bending over backward to cater to Su Chen's needs. As the racks of supplies finish reappearing, our Giga Chad boy stands triumphantly atop one of them, surveying the vast array in front of him. With a proud grin, he declares that it's all thanks to his spatial ability. With a mere thought, he can unfold this special power, cramming everything around him into a super-large cubic space, each side stretching 10,000 meters, all at his command. He even points out the fish swimming in the water stored above him. a testament to the versatility of his ability. With a casual shrug, he explains how this power makes purchasing supplies a breeze, costing him nothing. With a wave of his hand, he's drained 2 freshwater lakes and looted several cities doomed in the impending apocalypse. Su Chen reflects on the luxury of even a simple packet of instant noodles in the midst of the apocalypse, where fresh food is a rare commodity. With a sense of awe, he notes that time seems frozen in this space, ensuring that the food remains fresh indefinitely. Tears well up in his eyes as he realizes he won't have to resort to eating dirt like in his previous life. Bringing his hands together in gratitude, he gazes at the inventory displayed by the system, showcasing the multitude of supplies he's gathered. With a sigh of relief, Su Chen acknowledges that after amassing such a bounty, he can finally breathe easy in this harsh new world. Suddenly, the warehouse doors swing open, revealing the manager and 2 bewildered delivery guys. They're in the midst of a conversation discussing the need for assistance in moving the goods out. The manager's face contorts with fury as they realize the entire warehouse is already stripped bare. With a mix of surprise and frustration, the delivery guys let out a string of curses at the sight. The manager, seething with anger, demands answers from Su Chen. With a nonchalant shrug, our Giga Chad boy casually admits that he took everything. Surprised and angered, the manager lashes out at Su Chen, hurling colorful insults his way. Demanding an explanation, he orders the other delivery guys to apprehend him, which they eagerly obey. But just as they move to grab Su Chen, a glitch in space materializes out of nowhere. With a sly grin, Su Chen declares he won't be sticking around to face the wrath any longer. As one of the delivery guys lunges for him, he effortlessly slips into the glitch, bidding them a cheeky goodbye. Confused, the delivery guys look around, searching for Su Chen. The manager, dumbfounded, stammers out that Su Chen has somehow vanished into the great outdoors. Another glitch in space materializes, and our Giga Chad boy emerges headfirst, executing a mid-air maneuver to land safely on his feet. With a grin, he reveals his second ability, Space Jump, allowing him to shuttle within a 3-meter space. He explains how this skill comes in handy in the apocalypse, enabling him to scavenge abandoned buildings for supplies and make quick escapes from mutant beasts. Spotting his discarded uniform, Su Chen tosses it into the air triumphantly, declaring his zero-cost shopping mission a success. While the manager is busy scolding the 2 delivery guys, Su Chen's phone suddenly vibrates in his pocket. Su Chen glances at the warning message, informing them of the Earth's recent seismic activity and the possibility of localized natural disasters. However, it reassures that these incidents are manageable and shouldn't disrupt daily life too much. Su Chen adds that the official statement is meant to prevent excessive panic. With a raised eyebrow, he asks if they're aware that the end might be approaching. Su Chen's attention is diverted by his phone once more, and his expression darkens as he sees Jiang Xiaoxin's name flashing on the screen. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, he answers the call. As soon as he picks up the call, the gold digger girl launches into accusations, accusing Su Chen of playing disappearing acts and even putting their house up for sale with a real estate agent. With a mixture of frustration and disbelief, she questions his naivety, wondering aloud if he truly believes he can find a woman willing to be with him after selling their home. Looks like Su Chen's got some explaining to do, and it's not going to be easy. That bitch, who was with another man, continues to grill Su Chen about his responsibilities as a man. She bluntly states that while she doesn't care about his house, as a woman she needs the security of knowing he's willing to provide for her. Su Chen, unfazed, calmly asks if there's anything else that's bothering her. The gold digger doesn't mince words, offering Su Chen an ultimatum. Either he returns immediately and transfers ownership of the house to her, or he can forget about marrying her. Our Giga Chad boy calmly informs that gold digger that he's on his way back to Shangdu, and they'll discuss everything when he arrives. With a decisive click, he ends the call. His expression turns vengeful as he reflects on his past life with Jiang Xiao. He recounts how they spent 5 grueling years in the apocalypse, with him tirelessly searching for supplies to keep her fed. He even risked his life to bring her into a safe zone. Without him, he knows bitterly she would have starved to death in the apocalypse. Regret fills Su Chen's eyes as he remembers Jiang Xiao's betrayal. He recalls a man attacking him from behind, questioning why he's been returning empty-handed lately and insinuating that Su Chen may be hiding the good stuff. Su Chen collapses to the ground, lifeless. The man reports back to Jiang Xiao, informing her that Su Chen is now useless. With a cold indifference, she dismisses Su Chen's fate as the result of his own incompetence. She hints to the man that whether he's deemed incompetent or not will depend on his performance that night, leaving Su Chen's body lying coldly on the floor. Su Chen's face twists with a mix of anger and betrayal as he reflects on his past life, realizing he had placed his trust in the wrong hands. With a clenched fist, he vows vengeance against Jiang Xiao and Wang Haoyu, the man who ultimately ended his life. His eyes burn with a vengeful fire as he swears they won't meet an easy end. He wants them to suffer 100 or 1,000 times over for the pain they caused him. Su-chen trembles, his fist clenched tightly in anger. With visible effort, he manages to relax his grip, releasing a deep breath to steady himself. Coming to his senses, he expresses that the remaining necessities can only be acquired with money, but the question remains how to obtain it. Su-chen dials up manager Liu, promptly answers the call. With a polite greeting, Su-chen gets straight to business, offering to sell his house at half price. However, he makes it clear to manager Liu that he expects cash and he wants it pronto. Later, Zhang Xiao and Wang Houyu stand before the Dream real estate building when a cab pulls up in front of them. Su-chen steps out of the cab, and the bitch wastes no time expressing her frustration, demanding to know how long she's been waiting. However, to her surprise, our Giga Chad boy simply ignores her, striding past without a word and instructing them to move aside. Wang Houyu confronts Su-chen, his anger evident as he brandishes his bat. He demands to know who gave Su-chen permission to sell a house, reprimanding him for his audacity. With a menacing tone, Wang Houyu threatens Su-chen, vowing to ensure he doesn't see the light of day tomorrow. In a blink and you'll miss it moment, our Giga Chad boy's hand shoots out at lightning speed, grabbing Wang Houyu by the neck before he can even react. With a swift motion, Su-chen slams Wang Houyu to the ground, asserting his dominance and declaring he can handle things however he pleases. Seeing this badass version of Su-chen, the gold digger, Zhang Xiao, gets confused and furious and demands Su-chen release her companion, but her pleas fall on deaf ears. She calls out for help, labeling Su-chen a murderer, but before anyone can intervene, Su-chen swings his arm, delivering a sharp blow across her face. The gold digger collapses to the ground, utterly bewildered by Su-chen's sudden actions. As Wang Houyu's face pales and he struggles to plead with Su-chen to let go, Su-chen's grin widens into a menacing smirk. He reassures Wang Houyu not to worry, promising that his demise won't come too swiftly. With a final flourish, Su-chen releases his grip, allowing Wang Houyu to hastily retreat, coughing and catching his breath. Meanwhile, our Giga Chad boy confidently strides into the Dream real estate building, leaving Zhang Xiao to rush towards the trembling Wang Houyu, checking on his well-being. The bitch wastes no time in issuing her demand, insisting that Su-chen kneel and apologize immediately if he still harbors any hope of marrying her. However, to their astonishment, Su-chen responds with nothing but a menacing glare. The gold digger quickly takes the hint, turning on her heels and making a dash for it. Su-chen watches with amusement as Wang Houyu follows suit, chasing after her and pleading for her to wait. With a dismissive snort, Su-chen labels them both as worthless. Moments later, a man approaches Su-chen and politely offers him a drink. Introducing himself as manager Liu, he expresses his interest in buying Su-chen's house and seeks his opinion on the matter. However, behind his polite demeanor, manager Liu is secretly calculating the potential profit, believing the house to be worth much more than Su-chen's asking price of 700,000. Su-chen, aware of the property's true value, agrees with manager Liu's assessment. However, he insists on a full payment and inquires if it can be made that very day. Manager Liu eagerly agrees and suggests they sign the contract and arrange for the transfer of ownership, with the paperwork to be completed by the following Monday. Our Giga Chad boy muses that it's not all bad considering the current state of affairs. In the back of his mind, he toys with the idea that now is the time when one could pick any house they fancy provided they have the courage to inhabit it. Glancing at his phone, a notification pops up: 700,000 yuan, presumably a currency, has just been deposited into his bank account. As he steps out of the Dream real estate building, Su-chen can't help but feel a sense of security. Despite the chaos unfolding in distant lands, Shanghai remains a haven, nestled safely inland within the Central Plains. Earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions are mere stories from afar. Coupled with official statements quelling fears and other reassuring factors, Su-chen is convinced that life in Shangdu marches on with remarkable orderliness. Suddenly, Su-chen's attention is captured by a flyer advertising high-interest loans prominently displayed on an electric post. Intrigued, he wastes no time and immediately calls the loan company to inquire about mortgaging his property with a property certificate. Later, Su-chen arrives at the Hanhai International Building, where the Great Sea Loans Limited Company is located. Upon entering, someone compliments Su-chen's appearance but also subtly suggests that his house may not be worth much. Su-chen's eyes widen with recognition as he realizes he's speaking to Wang Houyu's older brother, Wang Dehai, who met a tragic end in his last life, devoured by mutant beasts. Su-chen wastes no time in getting down to business, asking how much he can borrow from Great Sea Loans Limited. Dehai informs him that he can borrow up to 500,000, but he'll need to leave the property certificate as collateral. Su Chen, feeling confident, pushes for an additional 100,000, insisting that he needs the money immediately. However, he assures DeHy not to worry, promising that he'll turn a profit within a week and promptly repay him. DeHy's smirk reveals his skepticism towards Su Chen's intentions, viewing him as a reckless gambler, willing to do anything for profit. He silently questions Su Chen's ability to turn things around so quickly and considers him foolish for even attempting such a feat. However, he remains pragmatic, indicating that as long as Su Chen can mortgage the property certificate with their company, they can negotiate further terms. Moments later, Su Chen checks his phone. A notification from his bank reveals that 600,000 yu has been transferred to his current bank account. Meanwhile, Jiang Xiao and Wang Houyu step out of a cab. Jiang Xiao questions why they can't simply reclaim their own house, expressing her frustration that Su Chen dared to lay hands on her and must now face the consequences. Wang Houyu curses, vowing to make Su Chen pay and even suggesting that DeHy should be the one to kill him. Suddenly, the bitch spots Su Chen walking ahead of them and urges Wang Houyu to confirm if it's really him. Wang Houyu nods in confirmation and Jiang Xiao suggests they follow him to see what he's been up to. Meanwhile, Su Chen heads to the Green City Hotel. He recalls that many commercial buildings collapsed due to seawater backflow and rapid freezing during various natural disasters, but the Green City Hotel remains standing until the end. As Su Chen nears the entrance of the Green City Hotel, he ponders the rumors he's heard about the well-equipped presidential suite inside. With the promise of amenities like a swimming pool, he considers the idea of using the hotel as a base. After all, living there for an extended period wouldn't be too shabby. Su Chen surveys the interior of the hotel, contemplating how, despite many warehouses being empty, there seems to be no shortage of hot meals and ingredients stocked here. As he ponders his options, a lady staff member notices him. The lady introduces herself to Su Chen as Liu Xinru, the hotel restaurant manager, and inquires how she can assist him. Her astonishment is palpable when Su Chen casually mentions that he wants to order tables for a banquet. She quickly assures him that they can accommodate his request. With a hint of admiration, Liu Xinru lists the available options ranging from 5,000 to 100,000 per table. In her mind, she can't help but wonder about Su Chen's grand demeanor, speculating that he might be a hidden second-generation rich individual. Su Chen decides on 10,000 per table, totaling 10 million for the banquet. He confidently offers to pay a 50,000 deposit, ensuring delivery to the address he provides, with the balance to be settled within a week. As he finalizes the arrangements, Su Chen can't help but wonder if the Green City Hotel lives up to such high standards. Liu Xinru accepts the 50,000 deposit and guides Su Chen to where he can make the payment. She quietly calculates that just the cost of ingredients for the banquet would likely exceed that amount, but connecting with wealthy individuals like Su Chen is worth it. After all, in business, smoothness is key. Politely, Liu Xinru asks Su Chen how she should address him. Su Chen offers his name, and she politely addresses him as Mr. Su. When she inquires if he's getting married, Su Chen confirms, requesting her assistance in booking a presidential suite. Moments later, leaving the hotel building, Su Chen wears a broad grin, basking in the satisfaction of settling a 10 million bill with just a 50,000 deposit. He chuckles to himself, amused by the irony that in a scorching post-apocalyptic world, a simple block of ice could be worth billions. Liu Xinru beams with joy as she comments on Su Chen's booking of the presidential suite for his honeymoon, expressing her belief that whoever marries him is truly fortunate. Unbeknownst to her, Jiang Xiao and Wang Houyu lurk behind her, eavesdropping on the conversation. They then approach Lin Xinru. The gold digger politely inquires about Su Chen's earlier activities at the hotel, but instead of answering, Liu Xinru politely asks for her identity. Without hesitation, Jiang Xiao provides Su Chen's name and introduces him as her boyfriend. Liu Xinru's eyes widen in surprise as she learns Jiang Xiao's connection to Su Chen. She remarks that Jiang Xiao was truly fortunate to have a boyfriend like Su Chen, revealing that he just ordered a banquet of 1,000 tables from them and paid a 50,000 deposit. While outwardly maintaining her composure, inwardly, Liu Xinru sizes up Jiang Xiao, considering her to be a 7 at best, yet possessing a temperament that even surpasses her own. She wonders why wealthy individuals always seem drawn to those types. Jiang Xiao and Wang Houyu exchange surprised glances, with the bitch expressing disbelief that Su Chen could afford to order a 10 million banquet. She turns to Liu Xinru for confirmation, seeking clarity on Su Chen's financial capacity. Liu Xinru nods knowingly, suggesting that wealthy individuals often enjoy the game of hiding their true identity, fearing that their partners might be after their money. Therefore, they reveal their wealth only on the day of the wedding. Jiang Xiao raises an eyebrow at this revelation, questioning whether these individuals might also resort to sudden disappearances and cold violence before tying the knot. Meanwhile, Wang Houyu bluntly asks if Su Chen, the apparent bootlicker, is truly as wealthy as implied. Liu Xinri reassures Wang Houyu and Jiang Xiao that Su Chen is indeed wealthy. Both are astonished when Liu Xinri shows them her phone, revealing that Su Chen had just transferred the 50,000 deposit. Later, seated on a bench outside the hotel, Wang Houyu points out the extravagance of 1,000-table banquet at a 5-star hotel. He turns to Jiang Xiao and asks who Su Chen has invited. In response, Jiang Xiao questions Wang Houyu, asking if he doesn't understand Su Chen's intentions. She explains that Su Chen wants to introduce her to their wealthy circle and reveal her identity. Wang Houyu's eyes practically sparkle with desire as he's about to grope Jiang Xiao's chest while asking her what their next move should be. However, Jiang Xiao swiftly slaps his hand away, asserting that she needs to take the initiative and create opportunities for Su Chen, the bootlicker. In a moment of reflection, the bitch imagines herself as a wealthy lady, her eyes twinkling with excitement as she realizes the unexpected turn her life has taken. She admits to herself that she never imagined such a scenario, especially not with someone like Su Chen. Glancing at his phone, Su Chen reveals that he sold the house for 7, taking out a high-interest loan of 600,000 and spending 500,000 on the banquet. However, he reflects that during the zero-cost purchase, which was essentially stealing, many essential items were missed. Thus, even with just the deposit paid, the remaining 800,000 isn't much. Su Chen chuckles sinisterly, commenting that at this point, if he didn't take out an online loan, it would be a waste. Next, Su Chen downloads more than 80 apps at once and indulges in a selfie spree, snapping 30 pictures in quick succession, and took the online loans with amounts ranging from 30,000 to 30 yuan. With a sigh of relief, Su Chen sets down his phone, which promptly notifies him of his bank balance, while hopping 977,000 yuan. A pleased grin spreads across his face as he reclines on his bed, finally admitting that he's managed to secure 970,000 yuan in loans. However, Su Chen suddenly sits back up, insisting that there's no time to waste as there are still many things to buy. Swiping on his phone, Su Chen remarks that items like fireplaces, ice makers, ice blocks, and smokeless coal aren't available in supermarkets. Fortunately, he can purchase them online with fast delivery. Su Chen emphasizes that after experiencing extreme heat and severe cold, whether he can endure it or not depends on having enough of these items. He quickly makes a call to inquire about the current rate of smokeless coal. Upon learning that it's 255,001 yuan per ton, Su Chen declares that he needs 2,000 tons of smokeless coal. Satisfied with the price, he agrees to it and promises to pay a deposit of 500,000 yuan first. The remaining amount will be settled after receiving the goods. Su Chen then makes a call to the ice factory, expressing his interest in ordering ice blocks. After a brief discussion with the person on the other end of the line, he agrees to their terms and confirms that he will come for a face-to-face discussion. A few moments later, as Su Chen emerges from his apartment, he's recognized by a familiar face, Lai Na. Reciprocating the recognition, Su Chen identifies her. Alongside Lai Na is Jiang Xiao, and upon seeing Su Chen, she remarks on the time that has passed since their last encounter. Lai Na chimes in, mentioning that Jiang Xiao has been missing Su Chen lately. However, Su Chen playfully rebukes the notion, criticizing Lai Na for speaking ill of his close friend behind her back. He points out that it was Lina who allowed Jiang Xiao to occupy his house. Su Chen, in his characteristically frank manner, directly asks Lai Na why she's missing him, teasingly questioning if it's because of his house. Lai Na appears upset by his comment, explaining that Jiang Xiao was simply testing him before. She expresses her disappointment, questioning why Su Chen seems clueless about Jiang Xiao's feelings and how sad she has been. The gold digger intervenes, asking Su Chen if he could accompany her for a walk. She admits that she's not feeling well and apologizes for scolding him yesterday, requesting that he not be mad at her. However, Su Chen abruptly walks away, asserting that he has other commitments for the day and suggesting that she go ahead and stroll by herself. Jiang Xiao questions the situation, expressing her confusion and noting Su Chen's arrogant behavior. Lai Na suddenly interrupts, urging Jiang Xiao to pay attention as Su Chen gets into a taxi. Recognizing the significance of the moment, Lai Na urges Jiang Xiao to hurry up and follow Su Chen, suggesting that this could be a final test for Jiang Xiao. A few moments later, Su Chen arrives at the Manhwa ice factory, where he's greeted by a man named Mr. Wu. Mr. Wu extends his hand for a shake, expressing his surprise at Su Chen's youthful appearance. Su Chen acknowledges their prior phone discussions and proceeds to inquire about the production timeline for 2,000 tons of edible ice. Mr. Wu proudly explains that while they may not boast about much else, their factory excels in efficiency. He confidently assures Su Chen that the production of 2,000 tons of edible ice will be completed in just 3 days. Furthermore, he quotes a price of 400 yuan per ton, resulting in a total cost of 800,000 yuan. Su Chen readily agrees and announces his intention to transfer 100,000 yuan as a deposit. He instructs Mr. Wu to deliver the ice to the address he provided within 3 days. Mr. Wu confirms the arrangement, assuring Su Chen that it will be done without any issues. As Mr. Wu's phone notifies him of the received payment, his eyes light up with satisfaction. With a chuckle, he curiously asks Su Chen about the need for such a large quantity of ice, speculating if there's a large-scale event. He then suggests the possibility of future cooperation, emphasizing the negotiability of prices. Su Chen's response catches Mr. Wu by surprise as he mentions his plan to donate the ice to Alashan for charity. Puzzled by Su Chen's altruistic gesture, Mr. Wu watches as Su Chen departs in the taxi. Reflecting on the substantial deal that was just sealed at the entrance, Mr. Wu marvels at Su Chen's capabilities. Suddenly, another taxi pulls up, and Mr. Wu wonders if another unexpected visitor has arrived for business without an appointment. To his surprise is Jiang Xiao and Lai Na. The bitch boldly declares Su Chen as her fiancé, taking Mr. Wu by surprise. She questions Mr. Wu about his earlier conversation with Su Chen. Puzzled by Jiang Xiao's sudden declaration, Mr. Wu wonders if this is some sort of detective play. Nevertheless, he acknowledges that Su Chen did indeed place an order worth 800,000 for ice. Both Lai Na and Jiang Xiao are taken aback by the revelation, expressing their disbelief at the staggering amount spent on ice. Lai Na and Jiang Xiao assert confidently that Su Chen must indeed be a super-rich second generation. Lai Na then questions Mr. Wu about Su Chen's plans for the large quantity of ice. Mr. Wu reaffirms that Su Chen mentioned donating it to Alashan for charity. Both Lai Na and Jiang Xiao are bewildered by Mr. Wu's revelation. Meanwhile, at a restaurant, Su Chen reflects that all the necessary items had been purchased, so it was time to enjoy themselves before the apocalypse. As a waiter greeted and welcomed them, Su Chen couldn't help but reflect on his past life, realizing that he had been too busy working to indulge in such luxuries. Even visiting a small cafe had seemed like a luxury back then. Glancing at the menu, Su Chen observed that the restaurant was truly upscale, with average spending in the 4 digits. Suddenly, Su Chen noticed a peculiar item on the menu, a question mark priced at 177,000. Perplexed, he inquired if they were actually selling a question mark. The waiter clarified that it was a special creation crafted by the head chef of their Yala music restaurant with the details tailored to the chef's inspiration. Intrigued by the uniqueness of the offering, Su Chen found it interesting and decided to give it a try. The waiter agreed, and Su Chen eagerly made his choice. As he awaits his order, Su Chen reaches for the book Shanhai Jing, a Chinese classic. Reflecting on his past life, he remembers the strange force that causes many creatures to mutate at the beginning of the apocalypse. Su Chen asserts that the monstrous serpent mentioned in the Shanhai Jing, appearing in the midst of floods, resembles the mutated serpent he encountered in his previous life. However, he prefers to call it atavism rather than mutation. Meanwhile, a lady approaches Su Chen carrying a dish. She greets him and declares herself as the head chef of Yala Music Restaurant. She tells him that this dish is specially tailored for him based on his temperament. Su Chen is astonished when he recognizes the lady, as she is none other than Hell's chef Duan Ya. Recalling from his past life's apocalypse, Su Chen remembers that Hell's chef possessed a magical culinary skill to turn decay into food. No one could resist such temptation. However, those dishes were made using the mutation source from within the monstrous beasts, so eating them would lead to certain death. Seeing Su Chen's expression, Duan Yu wonders what's bothering him, teasing if he's afraid such a beauty would poison the food. She then explains the dish called dual-faced life, where one side is tuna fried in brown butter and the other is deep-fried in puff pastry, creating a kind of steak with 2 different flavors. Su Chen samples the dish and admits that the taste is really good. He concludes that the 177,000 yuan is indeed worth it. While savoring the delicious meal, Su Chen couldn't help but entertain the thought of having Duan Yu cook for him during the apocalypse. However, he quickly dismissed the idea, reminding himself that trusting Duan Yu's cooking might be risky since no one knows if she would poison the food. Meanwhile, Lai Na and Jiang Xiao are peeking from outside the restaurant. Lai Na remarks that she heard each dish in that restaurant costs over 10,000 yuan, implying that Jiang Xiao's husband must be a second-generation rich kid. Lai Na adds that once Jiang Xiao becomes a rich wife, she shouldn't forget her sisters, citing how Lai Na was almost bitten to death by mosquitoes. Jiang Xiao agrees, affirming that she will definitely become a rich wife. A few moments later, Su Chen enters a bar and comments that it resembles the Golden Sails Vault of Shanggu. He observes that some rich kid had spent 2 million there without even getting to see what abalone looked like. Su Chen settles onto a couch having a drink and muses that in the apocalypse, there wouldn't be such places of extravagance. He regrets not entering such a place in his last life. Suddenly, a few ladies approach Su Chen, calling him handsome and questioning why he isn't drinking. As Su Chen raises a toast with them, one of the ladies offers him to drink with a shy-looking girl. Su Chen joins in drinking with the group, glancing at the girl sitting beside him. Her name is Yunyan, and she looks embarrassed as her friend reveals that she's there for the first time because her boyfriend cheated on her, and they brought her out to have some fun. Yunyan confesses that the scumbag didn't sleep with her but cheated with an older woman, indicating he really lacks taste. She asks Su Chen if men are truly concerned about sleeping with women. Su Chen asserts that a real man's nature is engraved in his bones with reproductive desires. Suddenly, Yunyan chugs her drink, surprising Su Chen. He notes that her glass was a neat win. She then slams it on the table. Calling Su Chen handsome, she asks if he's single, catching him off guard. Yan leans towards Su Chen, her face extremely red, as she asks if he's willing. Her friends cheer, saying it's the way to go because the scumbag wasn't even worthy of her, so she should be brave and go for it. Meanwhile, Jiang Xiao and Lai Na, who are still following Su Chen, reach there. Jiang Xiao's attention is caught by the cheers of Yunyan's friends, and she is startled when she looks in their direction. Jiang Xiao yells at Su Chen, catching his attention, and asks him what he's doing, while Lai Na questions if he's cheating. Su Chen puts his arms around Yunyan and declares that they should go outside. Yunyan exclaims that he's so manly. Su Chen then grabs Yunyan's hand, and as they move, he proposes that they should go upstairs. Lai Na and Jiang Xiao run behind them, and Jiang Xiao demands Su Chen to stop. Walking through the hallway, Su Chen quickly enters one of the rooms, pulling Yunyan in with him and closing the door behind them. With Yunyan in his arms, he apologizes to her, intending to mention something about Lai Na and Jiang Xiao, but he trails off. Yunyan looks embarrassed as she confesses that it's her first time. Su Chen is taken aback. He asks Yunyan if she's drunk and advises her to wake up while flicking her forehead, which makes Yunyan whine in pain. He suggests that Yunyan shouldn't go out for a few days and should stock up on food at home. Yunyan agrees, but as she's about to articulate something else, she's cut off when Su Chen opens the door and asserts that people in love shouldn't come to places like that. He's about to mention the future, but concludes that Yunyan should just forget it, as there is no future. Su Chen leaves the room, remarking that it's rare to have such an opportunity, so leaving like that is really such a waste. Meanwhile, in the hallway, the bitch kicks a door open and accuses that she knew Su Chen was in there, while Lai Na is knocking on doors and insisting that he can't treat Jiang Xiao like that. When Su Chen sees them, he laments that with those two around, that night's chance is gone. Su Chen is at a warehouse where huge trucks arrive. One of the drivers asks Su Chen where the 20 large fireplaces should be placed. Another driver mentions that the warehouse doesn't have a refrigerated room and asks if he's not afraid the ice would melt. Su Chen instructs to move the fireplaces and ice makers to the innermost part in order not to block the entrance and to put the ice blocks there. He emphasizes that they should keep moving. Another man arrives and announces that he's there to deliver coal. Meanwhile, Wang Hoyu tells Jiang Xiao that Su Chen rented a large warehouse in the suburbs and bought a lot of large machines that are currently being moved into the warehouse. The bitch inquires about what exactly Su Chen is up to. Wang Hoyu tells Jiang Xiao that she should look at what he is seeing and pointing towards the banquet. He asks her if it's a banquet from the Green City Hotel. He exclaims that the red carpet is even laid out and questions Jiang Xiao if she thinks Su Chen might suddenly propose to her and guests would come from all directions. The gold digger smugly comments that even if Su Chen proposes, she might not accept. She then tells Lai Na to accompany her there and see Su Chen's sincerity. Su Chen notices Jiang Xiao as she approaches him. She asks him why he's buying so many things and what's going on. Instead of answering her question, he inquires if Jiang Xiao could help him move things, promising that he would tell her after they were done. Jiang Xiao is taken aback when she hears Su Chen's request, exclaiming that he shouldn't joke around because she's going to become a rich lady, so there's no way she could possibly do such rough work. Noticing her reaction, Lai Na nudges Jiang Xiao and suggests that it must be a test for her to see if she qualifies to become a rich lady. Jiang Xiao awkwardly agrees and declares that she is not that kind of delicate woman. With all of her might, the bitch carries one of the boxes and declares that in order to become a rich lady, one must be well-rounded. So as long as she can withstand the test, Su Chen would definitely marry her that day. Meanwhile, Lai Na seductively suggests to Su Chen that she would help too. She's thinking that there's no second-generation rich person that isn't lustful, so as long as she shows a little interest, even if she could become a rich lady, she could at least have a sip of soup. Meanwhile, Su Chen smirks and states that he couldn't let the free labor go to waste because with 1,000 tables of food and 2,000 tons of ice, even if the hotel and suppliers sent people, it would still take a long time to move everything. It was already afternoon and someone exclaimed that they had finally finished moving. Meanwhile, the bitch is shaking and dripping in sweat. She declared that Su Chen is really too much because they have been moving things from morning to evening without even a meal. She vows that if she's going to be a rich lady, she would definitely make all this money hers. Lina is as exhausted as Jiang Xiao, and as she calls Su Chen a jerk, she complains that he actually made them move such heavy things, noting that those ice blocks weigh over 100 pounds each. Jiang Xiao remarks that the test is over, and she asks if Su Chen shouldn't announce that she's the bride at the moment. She mentions that the wealthy guests should be appearing. Lina agrees, commenting that the food is getting cold, yet the guests don't seem to mind, remarking that rich people are really strange. On the other hand, Su Chen is thanking the delivery drivers for all their hard work that day. He requests that they accept a small token of appreciation and declares that he would settle the remaining funds within a week according to the contract. The delivery riders are astonished as they exclaim that the thickness of the red envelope was at least 10,000. They enthusiastically thank Su Chen and call him boss. Suddenly, the bitch comes and asks Su Chen if he has something else to tell her. Su Chen remembers to thank her for helping him with work, but Jiang Xiao is horrified when he reveals that there is no pay, so she could leave. The gold digger argues that Su Chen shouldn't joke around because he must have a surprise and guests must be coming, so they should get married and have a good life. When Su Chen hears about living a good life, he confesses that he wishes that, but currently, not only did he sell a house, but he also owes a ton of debt. He asked Jiang Xiao if she would still be willing to be with him. Lina chimes in and insists that it's impossible because there is no way Su Chen could be broke with over 10 million spent on that banquet, tens of thousands in restaurant expenses, and all those things. When Su Chen realizes what they're talking about, he explains that there was a big boss who wanted to do a good deed, so he helped out as they wanted to bring people to the Alishan Poverty Alleviation Project. Jiang Xiao looks grim and grits her teeth when she realizes what Su Chen is explaining. She quickly charges towards Su Chen, calling him a jerk and accusing him of having been lying to her all along. But Su Chen easily dodges Jiang Xiao's attack and inquires what he had lied to her about. Jiang Xiao calls Su Chen a scoundrel and asserts that he's not a second-generation rich person at all, so he can forget about marrying her. Su Chen just glares at Jiang Xiao and questions who cares about a gold digger like her. Jiang Xiao looks terrifyingly enraged when she hears what Su Chen discloses. She walks away, calling Su Chen a bastard and warning him to just wait, as she will make him regret it. Lina declares that he is totally finished. Su Chen calls them idiots and predicts that in the apocalypse, they will be the ones regretting. He closes the doors of the warehouse and announces that finally all the supplies and resources are ready. Currently, they just have to wait for the apocalypse to descend. He uses his skill Space Unfold. Suddenly, there's a bright light inside the warehouse that can be seen from the windows. Later in the evening, as the crescent moon shines over the Green City Hotel, Jiang Xiao and Jian Xiaoxian join DEHYDRATED. DEHYDRATED suggests them that in the future, Jiang Xiao should follow Wan Hoyu, promising her a good life because in Shangdu, his words still carry some weight. Wang Hoyu states that Su Chen treated Jiang Xiao like that, so she should have dumped him a long time ago and should have been with him instead. The bitch expresses that she looks forward to Wang Hoyu's performance. Wang Hoyu remarks that Jiang Xiao shouldn't worry and let DEHYDRATED take care of Su Chen later, also getting revenge for her. The gold digger comments that Wang Hoyu is actually not bad, and besides, his brother DEHYDRATED is quite wealthy in Shango, so being with him is better than being with the bootlicker Su Chen. Later, Jiang Xiao is startled when Su Chen, who is eating at one of the tables, mentions that she really isn't picky. Jiang Xiao couldn't help but inquire what he was doing there. Wang Hoyu quickly tells DEHYDRATED that Su Chen was the guy earlier who laid hands on him, while DEHYDRATED calls Su Chen a punk. Su Chen calmly eats his meal as DEHYDRATED reveals that he was planning to find Su Chen, and he didn't expect him to dare touch Wang Hoyu, so he has some nerve. When Wang Hoyu hears what DEHYDRATED declared, he questions him if he knows Su Chen. DEHYDRATED discloses that Su Chen mortgaged his house to him before to borrow 600,000, with tomorrow being the repayment day. When Wang Hoyu hears that, he suggests that it looks like they could settle old and new scores together. Jiang Xiao and Lina look at Su Chen with disgust, and Jiang Xiao notes that Su Chen even dared to borrow money from DEHYDRATED, so she's afraid that he won't be able to clear the debt in his lifetime. Luckily, she didn't get involved with him. Lina observes that Su Chen really doesn't know his place for borrowing money like that. Meanwhile, Su Chen sighs and expresses that he can't even enjoy a good meal. DeHy leans towards Su Chen and cautions that he has to repay the money by tomorrow at any cost, yet he's there enjoying himself in the hotel. He questions Su Chen if he looks like a joke to him, stating that he shouldn't bother even if he can arrange 600,000 by that night. Wang Haoyu looks enraged as he argues that Su Chen won't be able to get a damn thing, so DeHy shouldn't waste time with him because the useless guy dared to lay hands on him, so they should go finish him. Suddenly, Liu Xinru chimes in and inquires what's going on there, proposing that they should talk it out. When DeHy hears what Liu Xinru voiced, he concurs and directs that she should make Su Chen kneel down and apologize to him and his brother, and they could consider the matter settled. Liu Xinru looks worried and she queries Su Chen what's going on there. Su Chen assures that it's nothing, just a few pests. Wang Haoyu is enraged when he hears what Su Chen articulated, and as he slams his hand on the table, he announces that he has been giving Su Chen face, but that day he is finished because even if the heavens come, they won't be able to help him. Suddenly, a man arrives and inquires of DeHy what they're doing. He looks annoyed as he challenges DeHy, questioning why he allowed someone to cause trouble there. Both DeHy and Su Chen recognize the man as Gao Kang, and while DeHy is alarmed, Su Chen looks intently at Gao Kang. DeHy's attitude quickly changes as he questions Gao Fang about what he's doing there. Gao Fang indicates that he has important matters to attend to that day, so he shouldn't cause trouble there, otherwise he should blame him for not giving face. DeHy looks anxious, knowing that Gao Fang is a well-known entrepreneur in Shangwu on the surface, but he has a wide network in the underworld, and there are many people under his command. Being on his bad side is not a good idea, so he agrees with Gao Fang and asserts that he should go ahead as he would come to toast him later. Meanwhile, Su Chen recognizes Gao Fang as the Skull Crusher, and he recalls that in the previous apocalypse, Gao Fang was a major force in Shangdu, and the Hell's Chef was also under his wing. Su Chen is astonished when he recalls that he heard before that the Green City Hotel was the first place to experience atavistic mutations after the apocalypse, and at the moment, it seems that Gao Fang's ability to become the Skull Crusher was due to the early appearance of atavistic mutations there. So in that case, he feels sorry. Gao Fang turns to look when he notices something. Meanwhile, Su Chen is glaring at Gao Fang as he declares that his opportunity is currently his. Gao Fang notices Su Chen and remarks that he is a kid who has an interesting glare. A lady enters the room and it is Duanya. She is accompanying Gao Fang, who graciously tells Mr. Sun that he has brought her as he requested. Duanya states that she's wondering what Mr. Sun wants to discuss with her. Mr. Sun laughs and expresses that he's heard about Duanya being a great beauty, and that day he finally gets to meet her in person. Mr. Sun looks ominous as he hands a glass of wine to Duanya and proposes that they should have a drink. Duanya is astonished as she can clearly see that there is something dissolving in the drink. On the other hand, someone is swirling a glass of wine in his hand. It's Su Chen. He reveals that in his previous life he hid with Jiang Xiao in the basement and barely survived the extreme heat apocalypse. Su Chen confesses that he never expected that at that time he would ditch her and she would end up following him there. He asserts that it's a good opportunity to settle old scores with Jiang Xiao while enjoying his wine. From a window, Su Chen watches DeHy and Wang Haoyu, and DeHy inquires of Wang Haoyu if he feels like it's hotter at night than during the day. Wang Haoyu concurs and suggests that it's why he suggested going to the pool to cool down, as the girls will come out in swimsuits later. Both of them laugh sleazily, and as Wang Haoyu questions DeHy if thinking about it gets him excited, DeHy commends that it was well done and he was quite clever. A few moments later, Jiang Xiao and Lai Na arrive in bikinis, and observing the moon, Lai Na tells Jiang Xiao to look at how bright the moon is, as it's almost like the sun. The bitch agrees and remarks that it's unusually bright. Suddenly, someone grabs Jiang Xiao's hand and proclaims that his love for Jiang Xiao shines as brightly as the moon. It's Wang Haoyu, and he declares that the moon is the witness of their love. But Jiang Xiao ignores what he mentions and complains that it's too hot, so he should hurry and take her to the pool. Meanwhile, Su Chen laughs and jokes that their love is about to explode. He raises his glass and welcomes them back to the apocalypse. Suddenly, the moon turns red, and it begins to rumble. DeHy and the others are horrified when they feel the ground rumbling. Suddenly, all of them begin running, and while DeHy, who is left behind, yells to the others to wait for him, Lina wonders why the moonlight suddenly feels so hot. Jiang Xiao cries out in pain, exclaiming that her skin is burning, and Wang Haoyu urges that they don't have time to go to the pool, so they should run back to the hotel. Meanwhile, one of the guys inside the hotel ponders why it suddenly became so bright outside. Another guy questions if DeHy and the others would be okay, and another guy responds, noting that they were just flirting with girls and he didn't understand their boss's happiness. Suddenly, they see Wang Haoyu and the others burst through the door, and red steam is coming out of them. While one of the guys is engrossed in his cards, another inquires what Wang Houyu and the others were doing, and another asks why their skin is turning red. Jiang Xiao and Lina are frantically asking for help, and they keep on screaming that it's too hot, while Wang Houyu is frantically looking around, searching for where the water is. Wang Houyu suddenly declares that there's water when he sees a huge fish tank ahead. The three of them quickly run towards the fish tank and dive into it. Wang Houyu looks relieved as he announces that something is coming back to life. Lina instructs that he should move aside, and Jiang Xiao warns that he should get out of the way as the water is hers. One of the guys inquires what they are doing, and the other questions where Dahai is. Wang Houyu's eyes turn bloodshot when he remembers Dahai, and he also asks where he is as if right on cue. Dahai arrives at the door seeking help. He's full of burns and steaming, and while one of the guys asks if he's okay, the other frantically urges that they should get the burn cream. Dahai asserts that Wang Houyu should go to hell, and Wang Houyu apologizes to Dahai and promises that he won't leave him again. Meanwhile, Mr. Sun questions Duanya why she isn't drinking. Gao Qiang suddenly interjects and reveals that he has prepared for a banquet, and as he's about to suggest something to Mr. Sun, he's cut off. Mr. Sun interrupts him and proclaims that in Shangdu, nobody dares not drink the wine he pours, so it's none of Gao Qiang's business. Seeing how quickly Gao Qiang backs off, Duanya mutters in her mind, cursing Gao Qiang that as a strategy to climb up to Sun Debio, he even set her up. Duanya looks anxious as she confesses that Sun Debio thinks he's invincible in Shangdu, harming many women, and that day he's targeting her. She looks at her drink and suspects that there must be something wrong with it, so she absolutely can't drink it, but she doesn't know what she should do. Suddenly, the moon shines extremely brightly behind her, which blinds Gao Qiang and Sun Debio, and while Gao Qiang asks what's happening, Sun Debio complains about his eyes. One of the men suggests that they should quickly close the curtains, and as they do so, the other remarks that it's so hot. Duanya observes that something seems a bit off there, and Sun Debio decides that they should go downstairs and see what's going on. Duanya lets out a sigh of relief when she hears that. Meanwhile, Liu Xinru struggles as she pleads with everyone to calm down and states that they have contacted the rescue team, so they should wait there. But one of the guests argues that they have millions at stake every minute, so he can't waste time there, and another guest concurs. Gao Fang arrives downstairs and queries a man he calls Old Mao what's going on, and Old Mao recalls that earlier, the moon suddenly brightened and the temperature rose. It was about 70 degrees Fahrenheit outside at the moment, and the news says nearly 100 people were injured. On the other hand, Mr. Sun calls someone named Minister Zhao and consults him if he could send someone to pick him up at the Green City Hotel. He acknowledges that he understands. Gao Fang probes Sun on how Mr. Zhao is doing, and Sun informs that Mr. Zhao is working to ensure that there wouldn't be any power issues at the moment and nobody is available to come over, so things are a bit tricky. Meanwhile, Dahai expresses his pain while one of his men applies the cream to him, and as he remarks that the man could be more gentle, the man replies that he needs to go to the hospital. But Wang Houyu inquires how they are going to get to the hospital with it being so hot outside at the moment. Dahai assures him not to worry as he will have Xiao Dao drive over to pick them up. A few moments later, Xiao Dao, who is in a minivan, is on a phone call with Dahai and he reports that he is currently in the underground garage. When asked if it's hot, he responds that it does seem a bit. As Xiao Dao exits the underground garage, he advises that they should wait there as he is coming. Suddenly, he notices the light, which makes him ponder why it's daytime, and as he's about to comment on the temperature, he trails off. The tire of the minivan he's driving explodes, and the minivan stops as its tires exploded simultaneously. Xiao Dao comes out to check, and he can't help but question if it's for real that the heat blew out all the tires and what kind of crazy weather it was. He starts running while he's on the phone with Dahai, and he explains that all 4 tires of the car blew out, so he couldn't get through at the moment and he needed to go back. Xiao Dao suggests that they should figure out themselves when suddenly the soles of his shoes melt. He trips because his shoes got a bit stuck on the concrete while he's running. Xiao Dao flinches as he falls on the road and comes face to face with a man who was burned to death, lying in the same position as him. Xiao Dao quickly pushes himself up and he exclaims, but as he pulls his head up, he is horrified when he realizes that his face has also melted and is stuck on the concrete. Dahai and the others who are on the other line are all horrified when they hear Xiao Dao's scream, and Dahai is so surprised that he accidentally lets go of his phone. Xiao Dao's scream can still be heard as the phone falls to the floor. On the other hand, Dahai's voice can be detected on the phone as he calls Xiao Dao's name. Meanwhile, in a room set at 25.5 degrees Celsius, it's a really luxurious room with its own pool inside. Someone is peacefully lying on the bed. It's Su Chen, and he's sleeping soundly. It is revealed that due to the sudden release of intense heat from the moon, outdoor temperatures have risen to 75 degrees, with ground temperatures reaching 100 degrees. This event has already caused almost 100 casualties, and it is recommended to please stay indoors and avoid going outside to prevent skin and respiratory burns. Meanwhile, there is a blast at the city power center due to the rising heat, and power goes off. At the Green City Hotel, DEHYDRATED realizes that Xiao Dao is no longer reachable as his number goes unanswered. Wang Hoyu informs DEHYDRATED that all other rooms are already booked, and this is the last available room, so they have to share. Listening to this, Jiang Xiao protests, asking how she can share a room with all men, and Lionette agrees, saying that she also needs a separate room. The electricity goes off, and it becomes extremely hot to endure. DEHYDRATED curses the place. Wang Hoyu removes his vest and tells DEHYDRATED that the air conditioning is not working, and the temperature is continuously rising. One of their men says that it is almost 40 degrees indoors, and they will suffocate if they stay here. DEHYDRATED tells them that they need to figure something out. The bitch suggests that she remembers Su Chen's presidential suite has a pool in it, and they can go there and claim it. Meanwhile, while taking a bath in his pool, Su Chen recalls that in his last life, the city's electricity had hidden dangers due to improper maintenance, and no matter how much manpower was invested, the city's electricity still exploded, affecting users connected to it. That's why this time he has chosen a room with a pool and has also prepared vertical air conditioners with large backup batteries to ensure room temperature. After adding some ice in the room, Su Chen settles onto the couch with a glass of wine, enjoying the cool ambience he's created. Feeling a pang of hunger, he decides it's time for a simple breakfast on the first day of the apocalypse. He pulls out some dishes from his space, quipping to himself that even during the end of the world, one mustn't compromise on breakfast. As he munches on his breakfast, he can't help but wonder when Kang's opportunity will show up. Suddenly, he hears knocking on the door and a voice urging him to open it. Meanwhile, DEHYDRATED, Jiang Xiao, and the crappy thugs are all on his doorstep. DEHYDRATED is startled to feel the cool breeze coming from the room. As Su Chen opens the door, they are all amazed by what they see inside. Wang Haoyu exclaims that the room not only has a pool, but also ice, air conditioners, and electricity. Lina shouts at Su Chen that while they all are burning in the heat, he is spending his time in luxury. Jiang Xiao agrees and tells him that he is being selfish. She commands Su Chen to get out of the room right now. Wang Haoyu urges Su Chen to step aside voluntarily, warning against the need for force. Meanwhile, DEHYDRATED reminds Su Chen of the money he owes him, pressing him to relinquish the room or face expulsion, considering it as interest if necessary. Su Chen remains composed in the face of their demands. With steely resolve, he draws his gun and fires directly into DEHYDRATED's stomach, issuing a chilling ultimatum. One more step forward, and it could be his last. The sudden display of force leaves the others stunned, their shock palpable as they realize Su Chen is armed. DEHYDRATED's demeanor shifts, acknowledging Su Chen's toughness. But before he can continue, Su Chen acts decisively once more, firing a shot into his leg. DEHYDRATED's cry of pain echoes in the room, serving as a stark reminder of Su Chen's resolve. With a firm tone, Su Chen commands them to leave, warning that lingering will only lead to their demise. He tells them that now he will count to 3, and they had better disappear. Meanwhile, in the hotel lobby, people are arguing with Liu Xinru that how the hotel has no food. Liu Xinru apologizes, mentioning that a few days ago, a person booked 1,000 tables for the banquet, and therefore they had almost run out of ingredients, and the deliveries were all scheduled for today. Listening to this, while pouring a water bottle on himself, Mr. Sun tells the waitress to bring that all food and water to him. People protest, telling him that he was hoarding the water, and now he wants to hoard all the food as well. It is like not giving them a chance to survive. Voices are raised saying that if he has money, that doesn't mean everything should go to him, and the food must be shared to everyone equally. Listening to voices, the muscle head of Mr. Sun come forward, saying if anyone has a problem with that, it will throw them out. Mr. Sun calls them useless and questions how they dared to challenge him. Just as they were arguing, DEHYDRATED and others appear behind them, telling everyone that Su Chen is on a killing spree. Gao Kang notices the gunshots on DEHYDRATED's body and assumes that there must be a tough character living upstairs, as there are not many people who can get their hands on a gun. The gold digger tells everyone that Su Chen's room has electricity, air conditioning, and even a swimming pool. People inquire if she is telling the truth. She tells them that she has seen all this with her own eyes, and there were even ice cubes, lots of food, fried chicken, and alcohol, and it looked like heaven. Everyone curses Su Chen, and in a group, they move upstairs to Su Chen's presidential suite to claim everything from him. Gao Chang also tells his thugs to go upstairs and handle everything, and they oblige. As everyone reaches outside Su Chen's room, he inquires if something is wrong. One of the people tells him that they have come to discuss something with him. He adds that it is an emergency, and in this whole hotel, only Su Chen's room has air conditioning, so if he can let them in to cool off a bit. An old man adds that young men should learn to respect their elders and care for the young. Meanwhile, a fat kid tries to sneak in to get the fried chicken, but to everyone's surprise, he receives a kick on his belly and goes flying outside the room. Our Giga Chad boy tells them to control their kids, otherwise he won't mind helping them manage their kids. A lady curses Su Chen that he was just a kid and how could he even think of hitting him. People start shouting murderer, exclaiming that someone like Su Chen doesn't deserve to live in that room. In the heat of the moment, one of them issues the order to charge at Su Chen, believing he's alone and outnumbered. However, our Giga Chad boy remains composed as they rush towards him. With precision, he draws his gun and fires. The bullets slice through the air, finding their mark with deadly accuracy. One man falls, struck squarely in the forehead as our Giga Chad boy calmly asserts that while he may stand alone, they only have one life to risk. Wan Hoyu is furious over his crappy thug and shouts at them, inquiring why have they left his big brother outside. The muscleheads try to calm him down, mentioning that his brother is already dead as his wounds were infected and rotting, and with this temperature and no medicines, he could not hold on. Wang Haoyu then screams Su Chen's name, saying that this is all his fault. Meanwhile, Lina and Zhang Xiao are still outside Su Chen's presidential suite. Trying to get his attention, Lina says from outside that she knows he could not bear to shoot them and he was just scaring Wang Dehai. Zhang Xiao also calls his name and tries to remind him how much she loves him. She requests him to let her in, and in return she will do anything he wants. Lina joins her proposal, requesting Su Chen to let her in too, and she's willing to accompany him and Zhang Xiao tonight. Su Chen opens the door and tells them that sisterly love sure runs deep. He invites them to come in. As they were about to enter, Wang Hoyu comes running from behind, telling them to get the hell out of the way as he is going to kill Su Chen. Meanwhile, Su Chen raises his bat and says that whoever walks through that door will die, and then hits Wang Hoyu on the face, who was flying coughing blood. Su Chen then asks if anyone else wants to come in. The girls instantly move behind, repeating that they don't want to go in. Su Chen then tells them to get lost, and they hurriedly run away with Wang Hoyu crawling behind them, urging them to wait for him. Outside the Green City Hotel, several armed military vehicles approaching. People get excited to see them as they speculate that they are there to rescue them. The tires of the vehicles were modified to treads and windows were also insulated, making people sure that these were indeed rescue vehicles. As the vehicles stop, armed soldiers move out from them, telling everyone to step back and make way. One of the soldiers inquires if Academician Liu Zhengo is here. A man comes forward and tells him that he is Liu Zhengo. The soldier tells him that they are the rescue team, and they are here to get him. He instructs him to hurry up and put up the insulated suit and leave with them. People start arguing with the soldiers, asking if they are not here to rescue everyone, protesting that they can't just rescue him alone. One of the soldiers tells them to calm down and says that the authorities have already launched a rescue operation. He instructs them that midnight is the coldest time of the day, and at midnight they can make their way to Silicon Valley Plaza on their own, as it is the nearest rescue point. People cheer up, realizing that there is a rescue operation going on and the authorities have not really abandoned them. Just then, Mr. Sun comes forward and tells the soldiers that he is the Sun Debiel from the Sun Group and offers to give them 1 billion to give him their insulated suits, as he wants to leave now. He then tries to snatch the insulation suit from the soldier. The soldier grabs his arm and replies that Academician Liu Zhengo is their geological expert and has an important role in coping with this disaster, and therefore he should not obstruct their operation. Mr. Sun then curses Gao Krang, calling him useless. He instructs Kang to snatch those insulating suits from the soldiers for him. However, Gao Krang hesitates, witnessing soldiers carrying heavy artillery. The soldier then tells others to retreat as they are ready to go. Suddenly, Zhang Xiao comes forward and informs the soldier that there is a murderer living upstairs. He has a gun and has killed several people. She tells them that this murderer is now after her. Other people also join in and tell the military personnel that they absolutely cannot let the murderer go free, and they must take action against them. Listening to them, one of the soldiers named Xiaofeng says that he will stay behind to solve the matter. Another soldier tells him that this is a special situation and he should not act impulsively. Xiaofeng tells him that he has discretion. He instructs him to take the insulated suit with him first, and he will contact him after dealing with this. Xiaofeng then moves upstairs, ready to confront the murderer. Meanwhile, Zhang Xiao contemplates that after Su Chen is dead, she can wait in that room and wait for the rescue. As Xiaofeng reaches outside Su Chen's presidential suite, he is surprised to see a camera planted in the pot. As he ponders the situation, a tear gas can comes rolling in front of him. Tear gas is released, and he starts coughing. Su Chen comes from behind and hits him with his bat, leaving him unconscious. Later, as Xiaofeng regains his consciousness, he feels his eyes stinging. He tries to comprehend his whereabouts and wonders why he feels so cold. Meanwhile, Su Chen is looking at his ID, reading his name and title as Lu Xiaofeng, Deputy Captain of the Special Forces. He tells Xiaofeng that now that he is awake, they should talk business. Xiaofeng mentions air conditioning, ice cubes, and asks Su Chen who exactly he is, and how did he get the gun and the flash grenades. Su Chen replies that he is just a recent graduate and the gun and everything else he picked up during a recent visit to the Middle East. Xiaofeng says if he is kidding, to which Su Chen replies that if he doesn't believe, then there is nothing he can do. Su Chen then questions Xiaofeng if the government has set up rescue points for citizens to go to tomorrow morning. Startled, Xiaofeng asks how he knows about all this. Su Chen continues mentioning that even though the temperature drops significantly in the early morning, staying exposed to the moonlight for more than 10 minutes can still lead to fainting, and many people will die from it on the way to the rescue. Xiaofeng answers that there is no other way, as although they have established safe zones, modifying vehicles is difficult. Many people cannot hold on any longer, therefore they have no choice but to let residents go to the rescue points on their own tomorrow morning. He adds that in fact thick blankets and heavy coats can also help isolate the temperature, and as long as they don't fall down, it should increase the survival rate. Su Chen asks really as he points his gun towards his head, and Xiaofeng confirms. Suddenly, Xiaofeng tells Su Chen to hold on and requests him to allow him to at least tell others about using thick blankets before he kills him. Su Chen unties Xiaofeng's ropes and returns his belongings. He expresses his respect for what Xiaofeng is doing, stating that he won't kill him this time but won't tolerate any repeated provocations towards him. Xiaofeng looks at Su Chen seriously and questions whether he is afraid that he will call for backup after leaving. The Jigga Chad responds confidently, pointing out his surveillance turret with facial recognition cameras and machine guns. Surprised, Xiaofeng asks where such a device came from. Su Chen explains that it was shipped in from the Middle East and warns that once activated, no one in the room will survive except for him. However, he adds that given the current circumstances, Xiaofeng probably doesn't have the time to deal with him either. Xiaofeng says that he understands and walks out the door without another word. After coming down, he only mentions the blanket, omitting any details about what happened upstairs. At that moment, someone notices that something is missing from Xiaofeng. His gun has been confiscated. They ponder whether Su Chen is so powerful that even a soldier could not handle him. Meanwhile, Sun Dibio's face looks extremely grim as he punches Gao, crying in frustration. He angrily questions why he bothers feeding them, criticizing them for not acting earlier, and calls them a bunch of good-for-nothings before ordering them to get lost. One of Gao Krang's underlings, a curly-haired rat unable to take it anymore, asks how long they have to endure Sun Dibio. Gao Krang's face darkens as he explains that the government has started a rescue operation. Once order is restored, it will still need Sun Dibio's connections. At that moment, Su Chen walks over. Overhearing Gao Krang's words, Su Chen wonders how he can still be delusional about restoring order amidst the chaos. Seeing Su Chen, Gao Krang's curly-haired rat becomes furious and shouts, threatening to kill him. Gao Krang hurriedly tells his little thug to hold on. Gao Krang asks Su Chen why he came downstairs. Su Chen smiles, stating he came to make a deal with Gao Krang, and pours out a bucket of ice. Seeing the ice, the two are completely stunned. The curly-haired rat excitedly shouts ice, ice, and suggests to Gao Krang that Su Chen must have more valuable items in his room, urging him to kill Su Chen to claim it all. In the next moment, Su Chen pulls out a submachine gun and holds it under his chin. Gao Krang quickly attempts to defuse the situation with a laugh, urging Su Chen not to stoop to that little rat's level and to discuss the deal instead. At the end of the deal, Gao Krang and his low-life thug enjoy the ice cubes that Su Chen gives them. While eating the ice, Gao Krang's little curly-haired rat mentions that he has been stuck there for 3 days, and this is the first time he has felt so good. He can't even imagine what's in Su Chen's room. Gao Krang tells his underling that they should agree to Su Chen's demands for now, planning to find an opportunity to kill him later and claim the room for themselves. Suddenly, Sun Debio kicks Gao Krang, cursing and accusing him of hiding ice cubes. He continues kicking Gao Krang, threatening that next time if he doesn't voluntarily bring out the good stuff, he's dead meat. Gao Krang seethes with anger at the humiliation, but Sun Debio remains indifferent. Moments later, as he eats the ice cubes, Sun Debio remarks on how great they are and complains about running out of instant noodles, expressing concern about starving without rescue. While talking, he notices Duanya sitting in the corner and comments on her modesty for refusing to take off her clothes despite the heat. He then forcefully grabs her hand, saying he enjoys playing with someone like her. Since he is in a good mood, Sun Debio asks Duanya to come with him. Duanya punches Sun Debio, shouting at him not to touch her. This makes Sun Debio very angry, and he tears apart her clothes while abusing her. He tells her that he will have his way with her right there and let everyone else have a turn later. Duanya tries to cover herself as Sun Debio laughs, mocking her for being soaked and asking if she feels hot already. He then threatens to do her a favor by taking off her clothes for her. Gao Kang, filled with anger, declares that enough is enough from behind Sun Debio. He tells Sun Debio to stop, which makes Sun Debio very angry. Sun Debio turns around, shouting for Gao Chang to shut his mouth and questioning if he even knows who he's talking to. Suddenly, Gao Kang stabs Sun Debio in the neck with a knife, causing people to scream that someone has been killed. After killing Sun Debio, Gao Kang declares that Su Chen is right. It's already chaos, so Sun Debio might as well die along with it. He informs everyone that the place is now under his command and that they must either go to the rescue point or die there. Duan Yat is very scared by what's happened, while someone who planned all this enjoys the show. Su Chen, watching from upstairs, notices that his words were effective. He contemplates that since Du Wenye was the boss in her past life, accelerating the process might bring her opportunity earlier as well. Meanwhile, Jiang Xiao and Lina beg Gao Krang, pleading for ice cubes and offering to do anything for him. Gao Chang first drinks the ice water, then throws the remaining at Jiang Xiao and Lina, telling them that if they want ice water, they must follow him and do whatever he wants. Both of them start to fight over the ice water like children. Just then, his curly-haired rat asks Gao Krang if they are not going to the rescue point. Gao Krang explains that in Doomsday conditions, survival depends on their own efforts and the rescue point is a kilometer away with no guarantee of reaching it alive. The idiotic thug then questions why they are still taking along Jiang Xiao and Lai Na, referring to them as freeloaders when they are already low on supplies. Gao Krang tells him that it's Su Chen who plans to keep these few people, and it just so happens they need a few cannon fodder too. Later at midnight, Jiang Xiao and Lai Na get ready to finally leave the place. They cover themselves with thick blankets and start walking out of the hotel towards the rescue point. Lena mentions that they only had a few snacks these past 2 days, and when they reach the rescue point, she plans to eat meat and drink cola. However, before they can go out, Gao Krang's curly-haired underling snatches Jiang Xiao's blanket. Angry, Jiang Xiao asks what he is doing. The curly-haired thug questions her intentions, pointing out that he gave her all the ice water and now she wants to leave, which he finds unfair. He reminds her that she said she would do anything and suggests she just hang out with him for a while. Saying this, the curly-haired lowlife starts ripping Jiang Xiao's clothes. Meanwhile, the people who left the hotel to go to the rescue center are very thirsty and angry because Gao Xiang has taken control of the supplies. They haven't been given any water or food. Staying in the hotel feels like being thirsty to death, but going to the rescue point might still offer a slim chance of survival. Hoping to survive, they all continue walking, but it's even hotter outside than they imagined. Even with boards tied to the soles of their shoes, they can still feel the heat from the ground. While walking, an old woman slips and falls to the ground. Her skin starts to melt like wax and she screams in pain, asking for help, but no one stops to assist her. They all continue walking. At a time like this, with uncertainty about their own survival, there's little room to worry about others. Even if it's family or loved ones who fall during an apocalypse, everyone's focus is on surviving first. Meanwhile, at the hotel, the dead bodies of Sun Debio and Wang Dehai, lying outside and burning in the moonlight, suddenly open their eyes and then come back to life. Su Chen watches people heading towards the rescue points, remembering that in his previous life he also went to the rescue point like them, and at that time, no one reminded him to bring a blanket, and even though it was only a short kilometer, he doesn't know how many lives were sacrificed. Just then, Jiang Xiao screams, telling the lowlife thug to wait as he tries to have his way with her. Scared of getting squashed in public, she suggests to the underling that they go to a room and have some fun instead of staying there. Lina agrees, saying they will go along with him. The curly-haired thug laughs, mocking them for getting shy and questioning what there is to be afraid of here. Are they afraid of ghosts? Suddenly, zombies of Sun Debio and Wang Dehai break the door and enter. Everyone is too shocked to see them and starts running away. Wang Hoyu, very scared, asks if they will turn into zombies if bitten. Gao Fong grabs him by the neck and asks why he doesn't go and find out, then puts Wang Hoyu in front of Sun Debio's approaching zombie. Wang Hoyu screams, saying it's so hot, and continues to express his distress about the heat. The curly-haired thug inquires Gao Krang if he's okay. Sweating profusely, Gao Krang comments that the body temperature of these zombies is very high. Just then, the Jigachad boy arrives and asks everyone to move aside. He is holding a sword to deal with the burning zombies. The curly-haired underling is surprised and comments if Su Chen wants to deal with those things. Seeing this, Gao Qiang becomes happy and suggests they let Su Chen kill the zombies and then they kill him. Su Chen knows that in the apocalypse, corpses exposed to sunlight will mutate, but they're not zombies and won't spread the virus. They are more like the drought demons described in the Classic of Mountains and Seas, a Chinese mythological creatures book. So he also decides to refer to them as drought demons. However, Su Chen knows that these drought demons actually retain some memories or attachments from their previous lives. He wonders if, in the previous life, Sun Debio got killed by the Gao Qiang, which led Sun Debio to hold on to a desire for revenge against Gao Qiang and become the first drought demon. Wang Dehai likely became another drought demon because Su Chen killed him. Wang Dehai tries to attack Su Chen, but Su Chen dodges and runs towards Sun Debio to seize the opportunity he awaited. He attacks Sun Debio with full power, killing him. Surprisingly, after Sun Debio's death, a purple stone, the crystal nucleus that can grant superhuman abilities, appears from his body. Su Chen grabs the stone, claiming it for himself. Just then, Wang Dehai attempts to attack Su Chen from behind. Su Chen jumps into the air, dodging the attack, and then redirects Wang Dehai toward Gao Qiang and his men. Su Chen then heads towards his room, telling him to have fun. Gao Qiang becomes furious after witnessing Su Chen's actions. Frustrated, he grabs Wang Hoyu by the neck, calling him useless trash, and throws him towards Wang Dehai to save himself. He then orders his men to grab weapons and kill Wang Dehai. Meanwhile, in his room, Su Chen prepares to consume the purple stone he retrieved from Sun Debio's body. He places the stone in a glass and adds some wine. In the apocalypse, crystal nuclei occasionally appear in the skulls of drought demons and mutant beasts. These nuclei are extremely rare, perhaps not even 1 in 100. To consume the crystal, it must be cleaned thoroughly before being swallowed directly, allowing the body to absorb its energy. As he swallows the crystal, Su Chen's eyes glow red. His body burns like fire and his clothes are torn to pieces. To control his body temperature, he retrieves an ice block from his storage and lies down on top of it. Meanwhile, on the ground floor, Gao Qiang successfully kills Wang Dehai. However, in the process, the water bottle gets destroyed, eliminating their last water source. Moments later, seeing an opportunity, Lina tries to escape, but curly-haired thug of Gao Qiang named Dao catches her, threatening to chop off her legs if she moves. Lina responds that without water, they will all die of thirst. She offers to reveal a way to deal with Su Chen if they allow her to go to the rescue point. Dao demands that she speak quickly, warning her that any trickery will result in her death. Lina explains that Jiang Xiao is Su Chen's fiancé. If they take her to Su Chen's doorstep, he will definitely open the door, allowing them to ambush him. Dao laughs upon hearing this, incredulous but pleased with the plan. Jiang Xiao, shocked to see her best friend betray Su Chen, ultimately agrees to cooperate. However, she insists on being fed first, and she specifically wants to eat meat. Dao expresses surprise at Jiang Xiao's request for meat, pointing out that the meat in the electric fridge is already spoiled. Nevertheless, Gao Qiang, intrigued, asks Jiang Xiao if she truly desires meat, then is up to her. He then hands Jiang Xiao a knife, pointing it towards Lina. However, despite her shock, she disregards the implications of her question, showing a lack of concern for such moral quandaries. Instead, she takes the knife from Gao Qiang's hand and advances towards Lina with determined purpose. Lina, alarmed by Jiang Xiao's approach, questions her intentions, pleading with her not to come closer, reminding her of their sisterly bond. Jiang Xiao dismisses Lina's pleas, asserting that they are not truly sisters, especially after Lina's suggestion of using her as bait earlier. Jiang Xiao shifts blame onto Lina, stating that if anyone is to blame, it should be Lina herself. With resolve, she repeatedly stabs Lina's stomach with a knife until she succumbs to her injuries. Gao Qiang and his men are taken aback by Jiang Xiao's actions. After Jiang Xiao kills Lina, she begins to laugh, expressing her sinister intentions towards Su Chen. Gao Qiang instructs Dao to tell Duanya to cook the meat, emphasizing the necessity of eating well to maintain strength for dealing with Su Chen. Shocked Dao tries to argue, but Gao Qiang warns him that without water, they won't survive another day, urging compliance to avoid becoming dehydrated corpses. In response, Dao, acknowledging the importance of replenishing their strength through food, orders another man to locate Duanya and bring her to them. Meanwhile, in Su Chen's room, he has successfully consumed the purple crystal that has granted him the physique-type ability, and as a result, his heat resistance has improved significantly, and his muscles and strength has increased as well. However, its concentration is interrupted by a knock on the door. Surprised, he checks the CCTV camera and sees Duanya outside. She intends to seek help from Su Chen, explaining that downstairs with Gao Qiang has become unsafe and Su Chen is her last hope. Fortunately, she still holds some leverage. Su Chen opens the door and asks if everything is all right. However, Duanya is taken aback and embarrassed to see Su Chen without clothes, calling him a scoundrel. Su Chen apologizes, explaining that his lack of clothing was an accident. Duanya asks if she can stay with him because downstairs has become dangerous and she no longer feels safe there. Su Chen responds, expressing that his resources are limited and they've only just met, so he can't simply take her and based solely on her appearance. He recalls from his previous life that Duanya is a strong-willed woman who had a cooperative relationship with Gao Khan. Although he considers subduing her, the atmosphere becomes a bit awkward. Duanya explains that she is not only a chef but also an outstanding graduate from Southwest Medical University, holding a medical qualification certificate and boasting 3 years of experience as a surgeon. In the meantime, she is taken aback upon seeing Su Chen's well-equipped room, marveling at the ice and electricity. She wonders if she needs to prove her worth to stay there. Hearing her words, Su Chen acknowledges that her medical skills are indeed enticing. However, he points out the scarcity of resources and the uncertainty of their survival until tomorrow. Duanya tells Su Chen if he'll let her stay, she will do anything for him as long as he doesn't kick her out of the building. Su Chen smiles at her response, stating that since she's spoken, she can consider the place her own home. Duanya realizes she spoke too hastily, but it's already too late. Su Chen warns her that her only option in front of him is to behave herself, without any ulterior motives, or else he will kick her out. Duanya assures him that she understands and never doubts his methods or determination. After this exchange, Su Chen asks Duanya to take off her clothes. Duanya is shocked and embarrassed, asking if now is the time to start. A while later, Duanya takes a shower, feeling astonished by the availability of water, electricity, food, and the luxury of a shower. She reflects that there's no need to worry about the scorching weather, being attacked by others, or any outside dangers. This place feels like heaven. However, she is aware that Su Chen isn't exactly a saint, and she understands what Su Chen is implying, but she dismisses it, having already considered such possibilities before coming up. Meanwhile, Su Chen discreetly watches as Duanya takes a bath, not to peek, but to ensure no improper behavior occurs. Moments later, after Duanya finishes her bath, she mentions to Su Chen that the outfit you provided is too small and uncomfortable. Su Chen reassures her, complimenting her appearance in the outfit and insisting it's not small at all. Duanya questions if Su Chen is being truthful. However, their conversation is interrupted as someone begins knocking on Su Chen's door, urging him to come out if he wants to save Jiang Xiao. It is Jiang Xiao with Gao Kang and others. She is pretending to be in distress to lure Su Chen out of his room. Gao Kang warns Su Chen that if he doesn't come out soon, they will break down the door. As Su Chen moves toward the door to open it, Duanya intervenes, stopping him. She warns him that those people outside have already resorted to cannibalism by eating Li Na, and opening the door would only endanger them to a similar fate. Su Chen, surprised by this revelation, confirms with Duanya that she means they really ate someone. However, he brushes off the concern, choosing to open the door regardless. Addressing the group outside, Su Chen advises them not to be hasty in breaking down the door, as it would be troublesome if it's damaged. Jiang Xiao pleads with Su Chen to save her from Gao Kang. Meanwhile, Gao Kang and his men are elated to see Su Chen finally emerging from his room. One of them had been hiding behind Su Chen's door, ready to launch a surprise attack. Instantly, he launches an attack on Su Chen, intending to kill him. However, Su Chen catches the attacker's hand and kills him with his own knife, shocking Gao Kang and the others. Meanwhile, Jiang Xiao frees herself from Gao Kang and runs towards Su Chen for help. Su Chen grabs her by the neck, noting that once someone eats human flesh, their body mutates and fangs grow in their mouth, making them no longer human. Gao Kang responds that in the end of the world, it doesn't matter if they eat people, as long as they survive. Jiang Xiao starts laughing, claiming that the human meat is delicious and has filled her with strength. She expresses her eagerness to taste Su Chen's flesh and then attacks him. Su Chen kicks her hard, sending her flying across to the other side. Su Chen has hit her so hard that she falls out of the hotel. However, somehow she manages to hold onto the corner of the window. Angrily, she vows not to let Su Chen off easily. However, the outside temperature is 86 degrees Celsius, and her entire body begins to burn, and she screams loudly for help. Inside, Gao Kang orders his men to attack Su Chen together, preventing him from drawing his gun. They rush towards Su Chen to attack him. Su Chen remains unfazed, stating that he doesn't need to waste bullets on them. One of them, feeling underestimated, warns Su Chen not to take him lightly. In response, Su Chen declares his preference for wasting bullets and shoots him point blank. Gao Kang orders his men to spread out and attack Su Chen from all sides. Su Chen fires another shot, but they dodge it. Dao laughs, boasting about their improved strength, reactions, and speed. He attempts a surprise attack on Su Chen, But Su Chen anticipates this, jumps into the air, grabs Dao's head, and smashes him into the ground. Meanwhile, the others seize the opportunity to attack Su Chen with knives. Su Chen swiftly grabs their hands, snatches the knives, and kills them. Frustrated and angry, Gao Tron attacks Su Chen, but Su Chen overpowers him and smashes him into the wall. Suddenly, Su Chen notices movement at the window. It's Jiang Xiao, who has mutated into a drought demon. She jumps in through the window, ready to attack. Su Chen is surprised to see Jiang Xiao mutate so quickly into a drought demon, indicating her attachment was quite deep. He snaps Gao Kang's neck and turns to Jiang Xiao, stating that since she won't disappear, he'll just kill her again. Jiang Xiao roars and attacks Su Chen. Meanwhile, Duanya is astonished by Su Chen's prowess as he single-handedly took down the whole gang of Gao Kang. However, she thinks that the mutated Jiang Xiao exudes a very dangerous aura. Determined not to be a burden and to find a way to help Su Chen, Duanya realizes she must act. With a hunter in her hand, she calls out to Su Chen, offering her help in defeating the monster. Su Chen, surprised by her courage, acknowledges that not being scared and hiding is commendable, but warns that she might distract him. Duanya blushes, asking what he means by that. Meanwhile, Jiang Xiao roars loudly and charges at Su Chen, successfully landing a powerful blow. Duanya, shocked, wonders if Su Chen is okay. However, Su Chen activates his superpower, Berserker Mode, just in time to counter her attack. Jiang Xiao is left stunned to see her attack fail against Su Chen. Wasting no time, she maneuvers behind Su Chen to attack him again, attempting to bite him with her sharp fangs, but to her shock, her fangs can't penetrate his skin. Su Chen taunts her, asking if her fangs are just for show, and declares that it's his turn now. Su Chen then grabs Jiang Xiao's hands, jumps back, places his leg on her waist, and asks if she's ready. Then he breaks her hands and smashes her into the ground. Jiang Xiao begins crying in pain from his attack. Su Chen reveals that he had planned to let her suffer more in the apocalypse, slowly torturing her to death, but now he must kill her sooner. However, just then, he notices Jiang Xiao consuming one of the dead bodies of Gao Kang's men. After eating the human flesh, she regenerates her broken hands. Su Chen is surprised by this, wondering how she can regenerate severed limbs. Duanya is also shocked by this display, but to her surprise, Su Chen starts laughing upon witnessing Jiang Xiao's regeneration. Duanya, confused, asks what he means. Su Chen explains that if she can regenerate, it means she's not so easy to kill after all. That it means he can tear that gold digger apart multiple times over. Su Chen then charges towards Jiang Xiao, grabbing her hand and asking to see how many times her body can regenerate. He starts with her left hand, breaking it, causing her to scream in pain. Next, he grabs her right hand and breaks it, eliciting even louder screams. He then moves on to her tail and both legs, raking them as well. Su Chen smiles, stating that was just the first round. Within a minute, Jiang Xiao regenerates all her broken parts. Su Chen asks if she's ready for the second round, and he begins breaking all her limbs again. Duanya is deeply surprised by this brutal scene. Su Chen doesn't stop there. He continues with the third round and the fourth, fifth, eighth, and beyond. Not only does he target her limbs, but even her eyes and tongue that regenerate with each round. By the 16th round, even her internal organs seem capable of regeneration. However, after the 21st round, regeneration stops. Su Chen considers gouging out her eyes but decides against it, reminding himself that he's not a devil. Jiang Xiao starts crying, asking Su Chen why he's doing this to her and what the reason is. Su Chen responds, explaining that it's for revenge. In his previous life, he had done everything he could to save Jiang Xiao in the apocalypse world, even sacrificing his own food for her survival. Yet, in return, she betrayed him. She not only killed him, but also slept with another man in front of his dead body. Then he just crushed her head and killed her. Duanya, concerned about Su Chen's well-being, asks if he's okay. Su Chen turns to her and inquires if she is ready. Confused, Duanya asks what he means by that. Su Chen approaches her, grabs her from behind, and teasingly remarks that since he acted heroically just now, she should be prepared to reward him. Blushing, Duanya questions his intentions of getting reward here, in this place. Later, at the rescue point, the security captain steps outside, noting that the temperature seems to be stabilizing. She wonders if the apocalypse might be ending. Suddenly, a soldier calls her over, pointing in a specific direction and indicating that a large group of people is approaching the rescue point. The captain, a silver-haired woman, looks closely and realizes that those approaching are not people but a horde of zombies. As the zombies charge toward her and the soldier, she orders her soldier to quickly evacuate the civilians from the rescue point while she holds off the zombies. The soldier hesitates, not wanting to leave her alone to face so many zombies, but she insists, stating it as an order. With no choice, the soldier runs inside, urging her not to die. The captain begins shooting at the zombies, shouting for her soldier to shut up and evacuate. Meanwhile, in the hotel where Su-chen and Du-eun-ya are, Su-chen looks at Du-eun-ya after an intense session of hanky-panky and says that next, he will let her experience the power of the berserker. Shocked, Du-eun-ya asks how many times this would go on. Su-chen laughs and informs her that the extreme heat wave has ended, so he needs to go out for a while. But he promises to leave her with unforgettable memories. Du-eun-ya tries to escape by asking if she can accompany him, but Su-chen refuses. He explains that people around him must meet two conditions. They must be valuable, and they must absolutely obey his orders. Du-eun-ya moans that she understands. Su-chen spends the entire day convincing her. Now assured that she is completely submitted to him, he prepares to leave. Su-chen heads to the hotel's lobby at night and takes out his car, knowing he must hurry back before the seawater surges in. He recalls that in his previous life, many zombies, driven by the obsession to reach the rescue point, eventually formed a tidal wave that attacked it. This attack led to the deaths of many civilians and soldiers and resulted in the scattering of a large number of military weapons. These weapons allowed various factions to form, leading to violent conflicts as they kill each other for resources. As Su-chen gets going, one of the thugs tries to stop him by pointing a gun and demanding he halt. Unfazed, Su-chen questions the thug's sanity for daring to order him to stop and rob him at this critical time. Instead of stopping, he speeds up, knowing these thugs have messed with the wrong person. Su-chen runs over them with his car and moves forward, determined to reach his destination. Stopping before a huge hole in the road, Su-chen recalls that the walls had cracked due to the scorching sun in his previous life. The combined onslaught of the zombie wave eventually led to the subway station's collapse. Peering inside, he sees the remains of thousands who had died underground, with zombies below attracted by the roar of cars. Aware that not all zombies have crystals in their heads, Su-chen decides not to venture down there. Instead, he chooses to check the situation at the college first. Reflecting on his decision, he realizes this is his first time back at the engineering university since graduation. Upon arriving at his destination, he puts his car back in his inventory. Entering the campus, the first thing he notices is zombies tied up with chains, being used as weapons by some men. When Su-chen tries to enter the college, these men try to stop him, demanding he hand over his backpack as it is their territory. In response, Su-chen takes out a fried chicken leg and asks if they could help him out and let him pass, mentioning he has some braised chicken legs. The men, excited at the prospect of chicken legs during such dire times, demand he throw them over. Seeing their reaction, Su-chen smiles and throws the chicken leg on the ground before them. As the men start fighting each other for it, Su-chen pulls the leg back with a string he had tied to it, saying they aren't worthy of eating these chicken legs. Angered, the men draw their knives to attack him. Su-chen, however, takes out his gun and kills all three with headshots before heading to the stairs. As Su-chen walks up the stairs, he reflects, wondering if his warnings in his previous life had helped more people survive, leading to the current situation with so many idiots around. While pondering this, Su-chen enters the Department of Reptiles and Snakes laboratory. The room is locked, confirming that no one has entered for a while. He grabs the lock and breaks it with his bare hands. Inside, he finds many dead snakes, and the air is filled with the smell of decay. As he walks around, he finally locates what he is searching for. Meanwhile, three men are standing on the other side of the door. They tell Su-chen that they know he is hiding there, demanding him to come out. Annoyed, Su-chen replies that it's a critical time and can't afford to be disturbed, warning them to leave if they don't want to die. Suddenly, a silver-haired girl appears out of nowhere and starts attacking them. Everyone is surprised to see that she has been hiding there. Before the men can react, she leaps into the air, grabs two of them with her legs and hands, and kills them. Without wasting any time, she runs toward the man with a gun, grabs his neck, and kills him too. Surprised by her actions, Su-chen points his gun at the silver-haired girl, but she reacts swiftly, snatching his gun and wrapping her legs around him in an attempt to kill him. However, she gets shocked to find that she can't twist his neck, while Su-chen seems to enjoy being sandwiched between her thighs. Eventually, Su-chen catches the silver-haired girl and ties her to a chair. He questions her identity and what's going on. The girl introduces herself as Bai Kang, the captain of the Azure Tiger Special Operations Team. She warns Su-chen to behave and let her go. Curious about the Special Forces, Su-chen asks if she knows someone named Liu Xiaofeng from the team. Upon hearing the name, Bai Kang asks if Su-chen knows Xiaofeng. Su-chen explains that he once saved Xiaofeng's life. While listening to her, Su-chen begins cooking steak in front of Bai Kang. He questions her if a group of fugitives took over the school, used students as hostages, and stole their weapons. Bai Kang confirms this, explaining that when the zombie horde attacked the rescue point, Xiaofeng led the civilians to leave first. However, they didn't expect that some escaped prisoners had infiltrated among the normal civilians. Su Chen acknowledges that it's not entirely their fault. He then starts eating steak in front of Bai Kang, who, after seeing his calmness, remarks that as long as they have weapons, these people are nothing to fear. She then asks Su Chen how long he intends to keep her tied up and urges him to release her quickly. Su Chen agrees, saying he'll let her go as long as she promises not to clamp his head with her legs like she did just now. Bai Kang agrees but insists that she wants to eat steak too. Su Chen, upon hearing this, responds it seems like it cannot be untied. However, he unties her and hands her a gun, mentioning that he has his own matters to deal with, so he can't help her too much. He can only provide her with some firepower support. He then hands her a rifle and instructs her to hurry up and leave, urging her not to bother him. Bai Kang explains her plan to sneak attack their stronghold, emphasizing that retrieving the looted goods is crucial for the survival of the people trapped in the college. She acknowledges that this might be the only time they meet. Upon hearing about the supplies, Su Chen asked Bai Kang to wait a moment. He then retrieves a sniper rifle from his bag and remarks that Xiaofeng is his brother, so let him help her. Meanwhile, at the administrative block, the gang boss who stole weapons from Bai Kang asks one of his men about the situation with the students. The man explains that their gang members are waiting outside, ready to take down the students in the dorm. The gang boss, smiling, decides to send those who are uncooperative to the front lines, letting them be the first to face any danger. Suddenly, the gate is broken down and Su Chen enters, apologizing for interrupting their meeting. The gang members, furious, demand to know who he is and how he managed to get in despite the more than 20 guards stationed outside. Su Chen smiles teasingly and asks if they want to know how he got in. He then points his finger toward one of the gang members and with a playful bang, the man's head explodes. Everyone is shocked, wondering how it happened. Su Chen warns them that any movement will result in death. The gang boss, visibly frightened, urges Su Chen to stop fooling around. Meanwhile, outside the building, the man Su Chen pointed at is killed by Bai Kang. She informs Su Chen that the target has been eliminated, but cautions him about the dangerous situation he's in. She expresses nervousness about his plan to lure the enemy alone, finding it too risky. It is revealed that a while ago, Su Chen revealed his plan to Bai Kang about reclaiming the supplies. He instructed her to take the sniper rifle to the roof of the opposite building. He would lure the enemy, and she would shoot whoever he pointed out. Reflecting on this, Bai Kang finds it hard to believe she agreed to such an absurd plan. Suddenly, the building's windows get covered by clothes and Bai Kang is surprised, asking why the curtains suddenly closed. She then asks Su Chen how it's going on his end. However, she hears a laughing voice warning Su Chen not to think he can do whatever he wants just by setting up a sniper outside. Bai Kang realizes she has been spotted. She starts running towards Su Chen, urging him to find a way to stall for time as she rushes to rescue him. Suddenly, she hears a voice ordering Su Chen's execution. Furious, Bai Kang sprints towards Su Chen as fast as she can, bursts through the door, and exclaims her intention to avenge him. However, she is shocked to find that Su Chen has already killed everyone. Seeing Bai Kang, Su Chen remarks that she is late, revealing there are no supplies there. Just seconds before Bai Kang arrived, Su Chen had single-handedly defeated all the thugs and gathered all the supplies, placing them in his inventory. The boss of the thugs, though alive, is now caught in his grip. Terrified, he warns Su Chen that he can't kill him, and if he does, the people behind him won't let him get away with it. Nonetheless, Su Chen kills him, declaring that they will be joining him soon enough. Bai Kang is shocked to witness all this. She asks Su Chen if he did all this alone. Su Chen responds that he has been doing his regular exercises. Besides, there are no more supplies here, and the thugs were probably already starving and weak. Hearing this, Bai Kang wonders if anyone else could have raided them. She is concerned that now that the supplies are gone, what will happen to the students? Su Chen thinks that if necessary, he would share some of the supplies he had collected with them. However, it will depend on their behavior. Then, he suggests they head to the girls' dormitory. Confused, Bai Kang asks why they are going there. Su Chen explains that he learned from the thugs that Xiaofeng and the other students were gathered there. Together, they head towards the girls' dormitory. Meanwhile, in a big hall, there are corpses hanging from the ceiling. Suddenly, one of the corpses opens its red glowing eyes. Another man wearing a metal mask, known as Steel Fang, is also approaching the room. He mutters about the captain causing trouble again and wonders if she is even alive. Suddenly, his men find her and shout that the captain is still alive. Disappointed, Steel Fang feels pity for her. One of his men instructs other to hurry and get her down. They bring her down and Steel Fang approaches her, addressing her as his sister Ji. He sarcastically questions if she finds the thrill she has been seeking for. It turns out Ji has been hanging there pretending to be a prisoner for days. She replies that the close call with death made her need his comfort. Steel Fang takes out his lash and strikes her back. After one lash, she asks how she is feeling. Ji, satisfied, confesses her masochistic tendencies, saying she feels much better. Steel Fang asks Ji if she saw everything that happened and who took his supplies. Ji, with a cold expression, tells him it was Su Chen. Meanwhile, Su Chen and Bai Kang arrive at the girls' dormitory and see that Xiaofeng is injured. Bai Kang asks him how he got hurt. Xiaofeng replies that he is fine and expresses his relief to see her back. Just then, Xiaofeng notices Su Chen and inquires about his presence. Surprised, Bai Kang attempts to explain that Su Chen claims to be Xiaofeng's brother. To shift the conversation, Su Chen asks to examine the wound, suspecting that Xiaofeng's injury is quite serious. Xiaofeng removes his bandage, mentioning that it is just a scratch, but it appears to be getting worse for some reason. Su Chen tells Xiaofeng that the injury is caused by cannibals, whose nails are full of bacteria and viruses. Without medicine, the wound could be life-threatening. Xiaofeng responds that medicines are rare resources impossible to find, expressing his sadness at the thought of dying this way. Suddenly, Su Chen throws several boxes of medicine towards him, saying that they should be enough. Xiaofeng is surprised to see so many medicines. Bai Kang asks Su Chen where he got them. Su Chen replies that since Xiaofeng is his brother, it is nothing to him. Su Chen reflects that in his previous life there was a man in the military with combat power comparable to a humanoid nuclear bomb known as the God of War, and if that person is Luke Xiaofeng, then his investment will not be in vain. Xiaofeng tells Su Chen that he owes him a favor, but knows that Su Chen didn't come just to deliver medicine. Xiaofeng asks Su Chen what he wants. In a serious tone, Su Chen informs them that a great flood is coming soon and they need to evacuate quickly. He explains that the extreme heat has already caused the glaciers to melt rapidly, resulting in seawater flooding. Eventually, the entire land will be submerged. Upon hearing about the impending flood, Bai Kang and Xiaofeng's faces turn pale. Suddenly, a red-haired girl shouts that it is nonsense. She questions where the flood is coming from and accuses Su Chen of wanting to drive them away to monopolize the school's resources. When Su Chen sees the red-haired girl, he immediately recognizes her as Fangking, his classmate. She is a second-generation, rich, famous female boxer at the university who enjoys creating gender divides. When Fangking sees a bag in Su Chen's hand, she tries to snatch it, demanding to see its contents. In response, Su Chen, maintaining his composure, slaps her and sends her flying. Fangking's tooth breaks from the impact, and she angrily demands to know how he dares to hit her. Suddenly, people in the background start shouting approval, expressing their relief. They complain that she has been a nuisance, hobbying an entire dorm by herself, and they have been fed up with her behavior despite her wealth. Hearing this, Su Chen comments that it seems she is quite infamous around here. Furious, Fangking shouts that she will find her father and have everyone killed before storming out of the building. Seeing Fangking leave like that, Bai Kang asks Su Chen if this is okay. Su Chen responds calmly, saying that Fangking is going to find her dad, so there's not much they can do about it. Fangking leaves the building, muttering to herself about men in the country being beneath her, especially Su Chen. Meanwhile, Steel Fang, who is waiting outside, catches her and demands to know the whereabouts of Su Chen. Frightened, Fangking reveals everything. On the other hand, Su Chen continues to explain the situation regarding the impending flood to Bai Kang and others. Later, Su Chen leaves the school thinking that Captain Bai Kang can handle the evacuation process. For him, the most important thing now is to wait for the Golden King's snake to mutate and then harvest it. Su Chen wonders if he could obtain hydrokinesis abilities by then, a psychic ability that allows an individual to manipulate water using their mind. Suddenly, a vehicle approaches Su Chen, accompanied by Fangking's voice asking him to save her. Su Chen looks in that direction and asks if she found her dad so quickly. However, it's Steel Fang who is driving the vehicle. He has tied up Fangking and hanged her in front of the vehicle. Laughing, Steel Fang tells Su Chen that he is from the Federal Bureau of Evolution. He accuses Su Chen of daring to snatch their supplies, joking that he thought Su Chen was a guy with 3 heads and 6 arms. Angered by Steel Fang's affiliation with the Federal Bureau of Evolution, Su Chen clenches his fists. Steel Fang continues laughing, saying they even prepared a gift for Su Chen. He opens the back door of his vehicle, revealing tens of dropped demons inside. Looking down on Su Chen, Steel Fang taunts, asking if the mighty Su Chen is ready to die. Meanwhile, in the girls' dormitory, Bai Kang and Xiaofeng began to hear a loud noise coming from outside. Bai Kang turns her head to the side and, with a serious look, tells Xiaofeng that the sound is coming from the same direction Su Chen had gone. Upon hearing this, Xiaofeng's expression changes drastically, showing worry as he starts wondering what is happening. Sensing something amiss, Bai Kang decides to investigate. She turns her head slightly towards Xiaofeng and looks into his eyes, asking him to stay behind and watch over and protect the others. Xiaofeng hesitates, unwilling to let her go alone, knowing the dangers outside. With a serious look, he refuses and insists on accompanying her. Meanwhile, outside, all the zombies spill out of the truck and start moving towards Su Chen. Steel Fang bursts into laughter, but Su Chen remains silent, casually putting his hands in his pants pockets. Steel Fang props his foot on the crane and leans forward, resting his elbow on his knee while staring intently at Su Chen. He inquires if Fang is Su Chen's classmate, offering him a chance to be the hero and rescue her. With a smile, Steel Fang tells Su Chen that if he wants to save Fang, he must kneel before him and beg. Fang is somewhat surprised, feeling a glimmer of hope, while Su Chen, with one hand in his pocket and the other under his chin, contemplates the situation, telling Steel Fang that saving her might not be impossible. Fang turns her head towards Su Chen, feeling relieved, and urges him to kneel before Steel Fang and save her. However, Su Chen, while staring into Fang's eyes, explains that there is a problem. Hearing this, Fang becomes somewhat confused and disappointed. She asks what the problem is and questions whether Su Chen isn't going to save her, reminding him that he had just promised to do so. Su Chen remains silent, and within moments, Fang loses her composure. She stares at Su Chen, unable to contain her anger, demanding to know how he could change his mind so quickly and questioning if he still considers himself a man. She adds that it is the duty of gentlemen to save ladies, her gaze filled with murder. Su Chen responds, asserting that he is indeed a man but doesn't believe he deserves to save her. He mocks her, asking if she wants him to seek help from the gentlemen abroad to see if they would be willing to save someone like her. Fang becomes even more furious, realizing that Su Chen is retaliating against her for challenging him in front of everyone in the girls' dormitory. She shouts at Su Chen, demanding to know why he seeks revenge on her for such a minor incident. In the blink of an eye, Fang completely lost her composure. She screams in frustration, asking Su Chen if he expects her to apologize and beg for his help. The truth is, he is a completely pathetic man, and she doesn't need help from someone like him. Su Chen can't help but feel satisfied. He points at her with a smile, telling her to remember her own words later. As the zombies gradually approach Fang, who is tied to the crane, she senses their presence and turns her head back, her expression filled with fear. She begins to wonder what is happening as the zombies draw closer and start to devour her, starting with her legs. Overwhelmed by pain, she opens her mouth and screams in agony, unable to help but plead for assistance and regretting her mockery of Su Chen. Steel Fang stares intently at Su Chen, observing that he is someone who doesn't help others in times of danger. Finding Su Chen interesting, he decides to put aside his thoughts, as Su Chen will soon meet the same fate as Fang anyway. It's time Steel Fang decides to showcase the technology of their evolution base. With a crazed look, Steel Fang takes out a jar of powder from his pocket, removes the cap, and begins to paint his face with the powder. He explains to Su Chen that applying this powder on the body makes monsters obey and treat them as one of their own. Su Chen remains calm and asks if applying ashes on the body could truly convince monsters of kinship. Upon realizing the powder is actually ashes, Steel Fang starts to sweat and panic. He quickly puts away the jar, turns his back on Su Chen, and begins to move away, disgusted. He orders all the monsters to attack Su Chen until they tear him apart. Upon hearing his command, the monsters gain momentum and advance quickly towards Su Chen. Su Chen simply puts his hands in his pants pockets, turning his head towards the approaching monsters. He stands still without making a single movement. Once the monsters get close enough, Su Chen takes his hands out of his pockets, extending them to the sides with a murderous look. He decides it's time to finish them off. In that moment, two swords stored in the system's inventory appear in his hands. Gaining momentum, he advances rapidly towards the monsters, using his swords to cut their bodies into pieces. After dispatching several monsters, Su Chen lands on the ground, supporting himself with one knee and one hand, dropping a sword in the process. It sticks into the ground. He extends his other hand towards the sky with a killer look, staring fixedly at the ground, causing the swords to return to the system's inventory. Steel Fang wipes the dust off his face and cleans his mouth with his hand, while turning his head back to confront Su Chen, questioning how he dares to play with him before dying. Meanwhile, Su Chen approaches the truck, puts his hands in his pants pockets, and stares at Steel Fang. As Steel Fang turns his body back and sees Su Chen, he is shocked and wonders how Su Chen got there. At the same time, Xiaofeng and Bai Kang leave the girls' dormitories and start following the trail of the monster's sounds. After several seconds, they turn a corner and are shocked to see so many monsters in front of them. Bai Kang becomes alert, dropping her arms to her sides, and worries about Su Chen, watching him surrounded. Xiaofeng, terrified, looks at the monsters with fear and sweats nervously, unsure where so many monsters came from. Steel Fang, perched on the roof, extends his hands to the sides and remains silent. Upon closer inspection, he realizes that all the monsters are standing still. Angered by this, he orders them to attack Su Chen. Meanwhile, Su Chen wipes his shirt with his hand and calmly asks Steel Fang to stop shouting since the monsters won't obey him anymore. Shocked by Su Chen's statement, Steel Fang looks at him with confusion, asking what he means. The reality dawns on him. Su Chen has already defeated all the monsters. Su Chen puts his hands in his pants pockets, turns his head to the side, and questions Steel Fang's futile efforts. Steel Fang is still in a state shocked, wearing a surprised expression as he wonders how this could be possible. Just then, Su Chen opens a system portal, connecting it to another portal that materializes behind Steel Fang. Su Chen steps through the portal and appears behind him, staring intently. He explains that originally he didn't intend to interfere with the people from the evolution base. Upon hearing Su Chen voice this close, Steel Fang's expression changes drastically, filled with confusion as he wonders what is happening. Su Chen seizes Steel Fang by the metal mask with both hands and demands to know who sent him to kill him. Fearing repercussions from his superiors, Steel Fang refuses to reveal anything to Su Chen. Realizing that he cannot let Steel Fang live, Su Chen tightens his grip on Steel Fang's head. Sweat beads on Steel Fang's forehead as panic sets in. He looks at Su Chen, asking what he intends to do. Su Chen smiles as he stares into his eyes, and Steel Fang soon realizes Su Chen's intentions. He tries to plead with Su Chen to stop, but it's futile. Su Chen applies force, causing intense pain to Steel Fang, who screams in agony as his head begins to separate from his body. In the blink of an eye, Su Chen rips off Steel Fang's head along with his spine. Upon witnessing the scene, Bai Kang is overcome with terror and speechlessness. She can hardly believe that Su Chen managed to dispatch all the monsters in an instant. Recalling similar occurrences in the past, she realizes that such feats couldn't be achieved solely through physical prowess. Her mind races, wondering what kind of being Su Chen truly is. As Su Chen holds Steel Fang's head in one hand and casually places the other in his pants pocket, he contemplates that he should restrain himself a bit when dealing with small fries. He wishes for a capable assistant to handle these tasks for him. Meanwhile, in the Green City Hotel, sunlight begins to filter into Su Chen's room where Duanyat is sleeping. She blushes as she experiences an erotic dream. Moments later, she opens her eyes, calls out to Su Chen with her mouth wide open, and still half asleep, sits up, pleading for him not to leave her alone. She props herself up with both hands behind her on the bed, opens her legs, and blushes even more, realizing she had dreamt of Su Chen again. Wondering why he hasn't returned yet, she turns her head to one side and begins searching for him. At that moment, she recalls his words from a few days ago. With a serious look on his face, Su Chen had asked her if she wasn't useful, then what right did she have to stay by his side? The memory of his stern question lingers in her mind. With a determined look, Duanyat decides to take action and not be a burden to Su Chen. She picks up the gun he had left on the table, resolved to become his right hand and left arm. Just then, she hears a sound. Gathering her courage, she leaves the apartment and starts searching the other hotel rooms. She grips the gun tightly and forcefully opens a door, revealing an office. Upon closer inspection, she realizes there is no one inside, which strikes her as strange since the sound clearly came from here. Suddenly, she hears the same sound again, this time from behind her. With a frightened expression, she slowly turns her head. Her expression changes drastically to one of surprise and confusion as she wonders when this could have happened. Behind her stands a monster, which suddenly appears in front of her. Shocked and sweating, Duanya wonders what kind of monster it is. Slowly, the monster begins to approach her. Duanya holds onto the gun tightly and starts walking backwards, her surprise growing as she wonders when the monster appeared behind her. After taking several steps back, her butt collides with the edge of the wooden table behind her. Sweat drips from her face as she slightly turns her head to see the table, realizing she has no escape. Panicking, she remembers the gun in her hand and decides to use it to eliminate the monster. She tightly grips the gun and slowly begins to lift it. However, as she moves quickly, the gun collides with the chair next to her. It slips from her grasp and rolls across the table. Duanya turns her head back slowly, her expression changing drastically to one of terror as she realizes her escape options are dwindling. Hearing the sound of the gun rolling across the table, the monster's penetrating gaze fixes on Duanya as it approaches her. It opens its mouth, roaring and preparing to attack. Thinking she's about to die, she brings her hands close to her chest, closes her eyes, and braces for the impending attack. To her surprise, instead of attacking her, the monster takes a strong bite out of the chair next to her. After several seconds, it stops biting the chair, turns its head towards her, and starts sniffing the perfume she is wearing. Realizing that the monster hasn't attacked her, she cautiously opens one eye and notices it sniffing her. Confused, she wonders what is happening and what the monster is doing. Immediately, she places her hands on the table, spreads her legs, and leans back to avoid colliding with the monster. The creature opens its nostrils, sniffing even more intensely. Duanya turns her head towards it, realizing that the monster is using its sense of smell. She comes to the conclusion that it might be blind and relies on its sense of smell to navigate. Seeing this, Duanya realizes she has narrowly escaped. The monster, however, starts following her scent, getting closer. With her legs still on the ground, she lays down on the table, turns her head to one side, and clenches her teeth tightly. The monster is now too close, making any sound is potentially dangerous. Sweat drips from her as she thinks frantically about what to do next. The monster opens its mouth and slowly approaches her. She climbs onto the table, extending her hand towards the gun with a hopeful look in her eyes. She believes that with a weapon, she could defeat the monster. She stretches her arm as far as possible to reach the gun, but it remains just out of reach. Despite this setback, she refuses to give up, straining to extend her arm further. Exhausted, her arm hits the table, creating a sound that draws the monster's attention. The monster immediately begins to move towards her head. With one hand resting on the table, Duanya turns her head to the side, watching the monster get closer. Sweat drips from her forehead as she worries that she's about to die. At that moment, the monster finally realizes there is a person nearby. Duman, with her entire body on the table and still reaching for the gun, turns her head upwards. Seeing that the monster has noticed her presence, she goes into shock. She looks at her with a terrified gaze, thinking this situation is dire. The monster opens its mouth and approaches her quickly, preparing to attack. In that moment of imminent danger, her mind is flooded with memories of Su Chen. She recalls a few days ago, Su Chen had his hand under his chin and eyes closed as he explained that his resources were limited and that he couldn't stay with her just because she was beautiful. He had told her that finding the crystal inside a monster's brain would grant her powers. Su Chen had turned his head towards her with a serious look and stated that he didn't want garbage around him. In present, determined not to be a burden, Duanya steels herself for what she must do next. As the monster edges closer, Duanya turns her body towards it, staring aggressively. Clenching her teeth, she resolves not to be a loser. Just before the monster can attack, she thrusts her leg forward, stabbing its eye with her heel. The force drives the heel through its head, causing intense pain. Leaning on the table, she drives the heel deeper into the monster's head, glaring at it with hatred. She moves the heel from side to side, inflicting more damage. After several seconds, she pulls the heel out of the monster's eye. The monster, writhing in agony, opens its mouth and screams. Duanya begins to move her foot away, but the monster moves swiftly, grabbing her foot tightly with its hand. Her expression changes drastically. She stares disdainfully at the monster, anger bubbling inside her. She can't comprehend how it's still alive after she pierced its skull. Furious, she repeatedly stabs the monster in the eye with her heel again, each strike accompanied by the monster's agonized screams. Seconds later, Duanya pulls her heel out of the monster's eye, causing its body to start falling backward. In a matter of seconds, it turns its head to one side and, overwhelmed by the pain, collapses to its knees on the ground. Duanya sits on the table, placing both hands on top, and watches silently as its body slowly falls to the ground. Seeing the monster lifeless, she glances around the office and notices a fire axe. She can't help but think that if Su Chen had witnessed her actions, he might have reconsidered his harsh words. Grabbing the axe, she rests it on her shoulder and approaches the fallen monster. With a serious look, she places her foot on its head and decides to verify if the legend about monsters having a crystal core in their brain is true. Later that afternoon at the engineering university, Bai Kang and Xiaofeng follow Su Chen's orders and begin organizing the evacuation of the students. Bai Kang, in particular, contacts her brother Bai Ming to bring his army and assist in protecting the students. Bai Ming, shouldering his weapon and holding onto the rope, turns his head towards the girls' dormitory with a serious expression, contemplating whether they should truly heed Su Chen's instructions. Meanwhile, Bai Kang, holding the weapon with both hands, turns her gaze towards her brother, her expression equally serious as she ponders his words. Meanwhile, in the reptile biology laboratory, the Golden King snake, a subject of Su Chen's keen interest, begins to undergo mutation. Hours later, Su Chen arrives at the laboratory and takes the snake out of its cage. The snake raises its head and stares intently at him. With a serious expression, Su Chen decides to observe the extent of its mutation. He prepares a large bucket specifically for this purpose, filling it with water and placing it near the table where the snake is positioned. Before Su Chen can act, the snake starts approaching the bucket of water, sticking out its tongue and inspecting its reflection. Su Chen quickly realizes that the snake understands it needs to enter the water to complete the mutation. Seeing this, he acknowledges that it has spared him the effort. The snake begins to dip its head into the water bucket, and gradually its body starts to mutate and grow larger. With a predatory gleam in its eyes, the snake opens its mouth, revealing larger and sharper teeth. Slowly, it immerses its entire body into the bucket, continuing its transformation. In a matter of seconds, the snake's entire body undergoes mutation, and the bucket starts to gradually break. Su-Chen, staring at the snake with surprise, feels somewhat confused and wonders what is going to happen. Just then, the snake completes its transformation, causing the water container to explode. Su-Chen, perplexed, tries to comprehend the situation. Once an ordinary snake, it now appears as a giant water serpent, emitting a suffocating and powerful energy. Su-Chen, dropping his arms to his sides, observes its immense growth with a sense of relief. He realizes that by providing only a bucket of water, the snake's transformation has been limited. However, he acknowledges that if it were to enter a flood and absorb more water, its mutation could intensify further. Su-Chen places one hand in his pants pocket and retrieves a sword from the system inventory with the other. He gazes intently at the snake and offers a proposition. If it obeys him, he will consider keeping it as a pet. The snake, realizing it stood no chance against Su-Chen, swiftly gathers momentum and makes a dash toward the laboratory window in an attempt to flee the area. With one hand holding the sword, Su-Chen brings the other near his face, surprised by the snake's escape attempt. He watches intently as the snake slowly maneuvers toward the window, deducing that its intelligence has been enhanced through mutation. As the snake breaks the laboratory window and begins to descend, Su-Chen is determined not to let it escape. He swiftly gathers momentum, leaps through the window, and starts pursuing the snake. Gripping the sword tightly with both hands, he focuses his gaze on the snake, questioning if its agile movement is what they call snake speed. However, to his dismay, the snake's speed is not sufficient enough to outrun him. In the blink of an eye, Su-Chen closes the distance and forcefully thrusts the sword into the snake's body, only for the blade to shatter upon contact with its tough scales. Examining the scales, Su-Chen is puzzled by their hardness. Lost in thought, he fails to notice the snake's approach. Suddenly, the snake seizes the opportunity and swiftly closes in on Su-Chen, opening its mouth with a menacing glare ready to attack. Reacting quickly, Su-Chen moves with remarkable speed, evading the impending strike. He then extends one hand toward the ground, while clenching the other into a fist, preparing to retaliate. With a serious expression, Su-Chen declares that if the blades do not work, then he will just kill it using his fists. As the snake recoils in shock from Su-Chen's evasion, it is bewildered by his swift movements. However, before it can react, Su-Chen delivers a powerful punch to its head, causing it to crash forcefully to the ground. But even as Su-Chen lands, the snake's body begins to coil around him, ensnaring him in its grasp. He turns his head, perplexed by this sudden turn of events, realizing he's trapped. The snake's cunning strategy becomes apparent. He's been lured into a trap. Now immobilized by the snake's coiling grip, Su-Chen watches as the serpent inches closer, its mouth gaping wide in preparation for the fatal strike. He turns his head away, fixing his gaze on the ground, preparing himself for what may come next. Meanwhile, as Bai Kang and her brother Bai Ming lead the students to safety, Bai Ming glances back, noticing Bai Kang's persistent scanning of their surroundings with a furrowed brow. He turns slightly and queries his sister about her apparent unease, wondering if it stems from reluctance to leave the handsome Su-Chen behind. With her hand resting on her waist, Bai Kang tilts her head to the side and adopts a serious expression as she assures him that silence doesn't imply foolishness. Bai Ming tightens his grip on the weapon's rope, pivoting towards her, and questions her affection for Su-Chen, warning if Su-Chen stayed here, then he would be doomed to die. Bai Kang meets his gaze, affirming confidently that Su-Chen will survive. Upon hearing this, Bai Ming asks her if she's certain. She steps closer to him, fixing him with an intense gaze, and elaborates that from the moment she first laid eyes on Su-Chen, she sensed his strength. His profound eyes struck her as enigmatic and almost monstrous, yet compelling. She asserts her conviction that they are destined to cross paths again. Simultaneously, outside the laboratory, Su-Chen activates his powers and swiftly reaches out toward the monstrous snake. Anticipating its attack, he seizes it by the neck and begins to strangle it. The snake, feeling the pressure, loosens its grip, allowing Su-Chen to break free. Staring at the snake, Su-Chen questions its strategy, challenging his belief that it could ensnare him in such a manner. Recalling the resilience of snake nerves, even if someone chops off their heads, they can still bite. He contemplates the potential consequences if such an event were to occur. Hearing this, the snake begins to panic, sweat trickling down its scales. Su-Chen tightens his grip on its neck and with immense force, twists its body from side to side, causing it to collide with nearby buildings. As the snake begins to lose consciousness, Su-Chen adopts a serious expression and forcefully slams its body against the ground, swiftly ending its life. Approaching the snake, he places his foot on its lower jaw, grabs the upper part with his hand, and with a determined effort, splits his body in half. Moments later, Su Chen retrieves a small crystal from the snake's corpse, his body emanating powerful energy. With one hand in his pocket, he brings the crystal close to his face, his expression remaining serious as he contemplates the potential powers it may bestow upon him. If extreme heat could melt human willpower, then the impending floods are set to obliterate human civilization entirely. Several hours later, the sky gathers gray clouds and heavy rain begins to pour. Everyone feels relieved, thinking the temperature will finally drop. However, nobody could anticipate the flood that is about to follow. Even inland cities like Shangdu could not escape the flood devastation. A colossal wave sweeps through the city, destroying everything in its path and sending the citizens into a state of panic. Guess those umbrellas are going to need a serious upgrade. The engineering university, unfortunately, sat on low ground, with only the administrative building standing tall enough to avoid the floodwaters. Meanwhile, Su Chen, having fully absorbed the snake's crystal core, decides it's time for a dramatic dive. Shirt off, he submerges himself into the water, embracing his newfound aquatic adventure. With no doubt in his mind, he realizes that absorbing the snake's crystal core grants him a new supernatural power, leading to fascinating changes in his body. Now, Su Chen sports scales on his face, mirroring the snake's appearance, and can see underwater with remarkable clarity. Talk about a glow-up. He's practically part fish now. He stares at the ground, realizing that contact with water has not only covered his body in small scales, but also significantly increased his strength. His eyes, now more sensitive to light, sport a protective membrane. Examining his hand, he notes that despite being underwater, he can't breathe through his mouth or nose. Yet he feels no suffocation, as if he's breathing through his skin. He wonders if this is a trait of the water snake. Looks like Su Chen just joined the ranks of the world's coolest amphibians. Next step, auditioning for an underwater superhero gig. He starts swimming toward the surface, appreciating that while this power doesn't grant him control over water, the ability to breathe underwater is quite handy, especially now that the entire city is submerged. In just a few minutes, the water level rises, flooding nearly half the buildings, leaving only the tallest ones peeking above the waves. Su Chen emerges, closes his eyes, and realizes the floods originate from the direction of Hotel Green City. Attempting to move against the current isn't out of the question, but there's one big snag. The water's ferocity turns submerged objects into hidden blades. Su Chen turns his head to the side, gazing up at the sky. Wiping his chin with his hand, he concludes that the volcanic eruption has reached its peak. The cities are far from the volcano, and the sky is relatively clear. However, once a large amount of volcanic ash rises into the air, darkening the daytime, they won't be far from a bleak end. As raindrops fall on his face, he muses that in these final days, human civilization seems like a simple joke. People don't want to be cannon fodder, they just want to improve their own strength. Thinking this, Su Chen feels a surge of fury. In his previous life after the Great Flood, several powerful factions had emerged in the city. The northern part of the city, due to its low terrain, turned into a watery zone occupied by an army of aquatic beings in human form, led by the water serpent and the Queen of Corpses. To the south, monsters resembling ogres appeared, forming a cannibal tribe known as the Glutton Clan. Meanwhile, the rats evolved, and the western part of the city fell under the control of the Rat Army, loyal to King Rat. The east of the city was occupied by the Skull Crusher Gaokong from the Hotel Green City. In his previous life, Su Chen had narrowly escaped death multiple times at their hands. With a serious expression, he gazed off to the side, remembering that in this life he had already dealt with Gaokong and the Golden King's snake. Determined to maintain his strength, he concludes that the best way forward is to obtain the remaining crystal cores. However, the cannibal tribe has a large population and numerous factions. The Corpse Queen is elusive, making it even impossible to find her now. He recalls that in his previous life, the Science and Technology University suffered a mouse plague, indicating that King Rat should be there. If he can find King Rat in advance, he can obtain the crystal core with less effort. Su Chen sits on a rock, one arm resting on his leg and the other on his knee. Below him, a pile of monsters stares up, waiting for him to dive into the water. Looking down, he realizes he has relaxed too much. In a matter of hours, the water level has risen so much that the only thing left in the lower part of the city is a communication tower. Clinging to this tower are two men, holding onto the pole, bewildered and amazed by the sudden flood. The bald man turns his head and sees someone approaching quickly through the water. Amazed, he informs his brother of this unexpected swimmer. His brother, looking up from below, advises him not to be so surprised. Given the current situation, he reasons anyone in the water is most likely already dead. Several seconds later, the man turns his head back and is shocked to see Su Chen approaching them. Upon closer inspection, he immediately recognizes him. It's surprising to them that Su-chen hasn't been drowned by the flood yet. The man looks at Su-chen with a surprised expression, clenching his teeth tightly. If it weren't for their orders to watch over Su-chen, he and his brother wouldn't have been caught in the flood. He decides that if Su-chen dares to come any closer, they'll kick him and throw him forcefully into the water. The bald man looks back and explains to his brother that Su-chen is incredibly fast. As they both peer closer, they notice something trailing behind him. Nervousness sets in, causing the bald man to break into a sweat. His brother, surprised by his reaction, asks what he's referring to. Upon closer inspection, the bald man sees a horde of monsters chasing Su-chen. They both exchange bewildered glances, unsure of what these creatures are. Despite Su-chen swimming at high speed against the current, propelled by the crystal core, the monsters are close behind, matching his pace. Just as Su-chen heads towards the communication tower, the bald man clings even tighter to the pole, panic evident in his voice. He warns Su-chen in a serious tone not to approach them, emphasizing that they belong to the Federal Bureau of Evolution. Su-chen stares at the bald man and, upon realizing they belong to the Federal Bureau of Evolution, notes how far their influence has extended in this life. He thinks he's encountered them at just the right moment to uncover what's happening. Deciding to investigate, he takes a powerful leap and moves toward them. Both men turn their heads in shock, unable to believe that Su-chen could jump so high despite being in the water. Su-chen approaches the bald man, whose expression changes drastically with surprise and apprehension. Just as Su-chen steps on his face, the bald man clenches his teeth tightly, losing his grip on the pole. If superhero landings were a sport, he'd have just nailed a perfect score. The bald man begins to fall towards the water, screaming for help. His brother, looking down, is shocked and starts sweating profusely, realizing that the situation has taken a dramatic turn. Determined not to let his brother fall into the water, the man grabs his hand without hesitation. He holds onto the pole tightly with his legs, using one hand to secure his grip and the other to grasp his brother's arm. The bald man is heavy, causing his brother to close his eyes and clench his teeth tightly. Quickly, the brother looks at the bald man and explains that he can't reach the pole because it's too far away. Just as his strength begins to fade, he closes his eyes and clenches his teeth, reassuring his brother not to worry because he won't let go. The bald man, panicking, tells his brother that if he is too heavy, he should let go, fearing that if they continue like this, both will die. But the brother refuses, determined not to give up or let go. If they were going to die, they would do it together. Meanwhile, Su-chen climbs up the communication tower, sits on the railing, and places both hands on his knees. He looks at them intently and demands they tell him everything they know about the Federal Bureau of Evolution. Su-chen figures that while they're hanging on for dear life, a little chat about secret organizations could be just the thing to lighten the mood, or at least get some useful information. The man, eyes closed and gripping his brother's arm, refuses to reveal any information to Su-chen. He believes that even if they die, someone else will avenge them. Su-chen, impressed by his bravery, commends him and tells him not to blame him for what happens next. As they continue their tense conversation, the monsters begin to approach and emerge from the water, adding a whole new level of urgency to their precarious situation. With monsters now joining their little chat, this might be the most intense impromptu cue and a session Su-chen's ever hosted. One of the monsters reaches up and grabs the bald man's leg, forcefully pulling him downward. His brother, unable to maintain his grip, lets go and the bald man plunges into the water. Desperately, the bald man reaches out toward his brother, screaming for help as he falls. Su-chen, watching with a serious gaze, tells the brother that they got themselves into this mess and can't blame him. Seeing his brother surrounded by monsters and sinking into the water, the remaining man panics, realizing their dire predicament. Without hesitating for a second, the brother jumps into the water, determined to save him. Both men submerge as a monster opens its mouth and starts approaching. The man opens his eyes, turns his head, and upon seeing the monster, clenches his teeth tightly and panics. Realizing the monster is ready to attack, he turns his head to the side, thinking he's doomed. With a desperate look, he closes his eyes and braces himself for the attack. Just then, Su-chen jumps from the communication tower, plunging into the water. With a swift move, he uses his sword to end the monster's life. The man emerges from the water and nearby monsters prepare to attack. However, Su-chen quickly takes out swords from his system's inventory, moving at incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, he begins dispatching all monsters. Several seconds later, the bald man also surfaces, panting heavily to catch his breath. The other man turns to one side and, seeing that Su-chen has killed all the monsters, concludes that Su-chen is incredibly strong. Amazed, he wonders if Su-chen is truly human. Su-chen pulls the two brothers out of the water and all three climb back up to the communication tower. The brothers thank him, realizing they truly owe him a favor now. Grateful and indebted, they decide to tell Su-chen everything they know about the evolution base. In reality, they had been sent from the Federal Bureau of Evolution to monitor Su-chen. The bald man, leaning heavily against the railing, pants heavily and explains that the Federal Bureau of Evolution is stationed at the Science and Technology University, with leader Liu overseeing the research laboratory as its core. Su-chen listens intently, realizing that his suspicions about being monitored were right on the mark. The other man, also leaning against the railing and gasping for breath, explains that they are just following orders from their superiors. Su-chen simply stares at them in silence. Remembering the rat plague from his past life at the Science and Technology University, he connects the dots and realizes it's linked to the Federal Bureau of Evolution. With a calm look, Su-chen asks them about mutant rats in the research laboratory. The man looks at Su-chen and explains they have no idea, as only research staff can enter the lab. Hearing this, Su-chen's expression changes drastically. With determination, he decides to investigate the situation at the Science and Technology University and take action before another rat plague outbreak occurs. If there's one thing he hates more than surprise parties, it's surprise mutant rats. Time to crash that exclusive lab party before things get hairy. Meanwhile, the waves of water slam against the Green City Hotel. Inside, Doon-ye finds herself fortunate as she has finally extracted a crystal core from the monster's brain. Instantly, she absorbs the crystal core. Seated at a table, she pants heavily, stretching her arms out beside her. Intensely staring at her hands, she contemplates whether she has succeeded and got the powers, though she can't help but wonder if she accidentally learned monster yoga instead. In the meantime, the floodwaters infiltrated the hotel, cascading into Su-chen's apartment and soaking the floor. Placing her foot down, she's taken aback by how high the water has risen. Just then, tentacles slither into view as if the hotel's offering an unexpected aquatic spa treatment. Turning her head, she's shocked to see before her eyes that the tentacles are actually part of a mutant lamprey's body. Slowly opens its mouth and starts climbing up her body, probably mistaking her for a seafood buffet on legs. Looking down, Doon-ye is horrified to see the mutant lamprey slowly climbing up her body. Fear grips her as sweat beads on her forehead, her eyes wide with terror. She wonders what this creature could possibly be. Before she can react, the lamprey wraps itself around her with its body, almost rendering her immobile. It's like getting a clingy, aquatic hug from a creature that clearly skipped its etiquette classes. Unable to move, Doon-ye looks down and recoils at the sight of the lamprey's sticky, slippery slime coating its body. Disgust washes over her as she gets lost in her thoughts. Suddenly, the lamprey inches closer to her face. She gazes at it with a surprised expression, sweat dripping down her forehead as she wonders how this creature got into the hotel and what it wants. Upon closer inspection, she notices the lamprey's mouth, filled with rows of sharp teeth, giving her a glimpse of what a dental appointment in the wild might look like. Just as the lamprey moves closer to her face, Doon-ye, unable to move, braces herself for an imminent attack. Turning her head to the side, she shuts her eyes tightly and clenches her teeth in anticipation. With her body immobilized except for her hands, she swiftly grabs the lamprey by its head just in time, preventing it from getting any closer. But then several more lampreys appear and quickly surround her arms with their bodies. Doon-ye realizes this is bad news. If one mutant lamprey was already a handful, she's completely stumped on how to deal with a whole squad of them. In an instant, the sticky lampreys coil around her, making her break out in a nervous sweat and turn as red as a tomato. She anxiously looks ahead, hoping someone with a can of lamprey repellent will magically appear any moment now. Soon realizing she's completely trapped, Doon-ye finds herself immobilized with lampreys coiled tightly around her arms. To make matters worse, several more mutant lampreys appear in front of her, staring at her with a murderous gaze and opening their mouths menacingly. Just as they slowly advance towards her, she lifts her head and panics, sweat dripping down her forehead at an alarming rate. Slightly turning her head back, she wears a serious expression, realizing this is a dire situation. She hasn't even had time to adapt to her new special abilities yet. Several days ago, Su-chen calmly reached out his hand, withdrawing something from the system's inventory. While doing so, he looked at Doon-ye with a composed demeanor and began to explain that consuming a crystal core could grant special abilities. However, he noted that many cores looked unremarkable, making it challenging to discern their effects by appearance alone. Extending his hand further towards her, he demonstrated by conjuring an apple into existence. It was a bit like a magic trick, except instead of rabbits, they deal in snacks. Doon-ye, dressed as a nurse, gazes at the apple in Su-chen's hand and questions how she could use her special abilities if she doesn't even know what they are. He looks calmly at Doon-ye and explains that one should experiment and experience their own body, the environment around them, and all the changes that occur. Only then can they attempt to master and control their special abilities. It's like trying to drive a car blindfolded. First, you've got to figure out where the steering wheel is before you start racing. In present, remembering Su-chen's advice, Duanya looks down at the ground with a smile, beginning to feel her special ability manifest. Just as the lampreys approach, she turns her head to the side and notices their brains shining faintly through their bodies. Seeing an opportunity, she lifts her head, her eyes shining with determination. She stares at the lampreys intensely and gives them a commanding order to halt. It's like a standoff between a determined hero and a bunch of confused lampreys wondering if they should obey or ask for directions instead. Hearing her commanding voice, the lampreys step back with confused expressions, gazing at Duanya and wondering what's happening. Without hesitation, they stop coiling around her body, releasing her. Her eyes shining with newfound power, Duanya places a hand on her chest, looks down and can't help but feel annoyed. Now her entire body is sticky. On the table lies a fire axe and Duanya reaches out to grab it, instructing the lampreys to wait a moment as she prepares to deal with them. She takes the axe, rests it on her shoulder confidently, and approaches the lampreys. Placing her hand on her waist, she stares at them intently with a smile, deciding it's time to turn them into lamprey chives. Gripping the axe tightly, she advances towards them with an aggressive gaze, clenches her teeth, and swings the axe with precision, cutting their bodies in half. The lampreys scream in agony, their mouths wide open with pain as she continues cutting, blood splattering on the walls. It's a gory spectacle, like a butcher at work, except the meat screams back. Several minutes later, with the axe in one hand and holding a piece of her dirty dress in the other, Duanya finishes off all the lampreys. Realizing she's completely filthy, she decides it's time to head home for a bath. As she's distracted by her thoughts, someone approaches her from behind, a man. He looks down at the ground and asks if he can join her for a bath. Startled, Duanya snaps out of her trance, slightly turns her head back, and with a surprised expression wonders who this man could be. Gripping the axe with both hands now, she twists her body around, fixes him with a furious gaze, clenches her teeth tightly, and demands to know his identity. It turns out it is none other than her master, Su-chen, standing before her. Radiating an aura of blue energy, he approaches Duanya, locking eyes with her. With a smile, he praises her for successfully dealing with the mutant lampreys and for her adeptness with weapons. Upon realizing the man is Su-chen, Duanya's expression underwent a drastic change. She looks at him with surprise and shock, and without a moment's hesitation, she jumps onto him, giving him a tight hug. Closing her eyes, she expresses her happiness at his return and admits she has been very worried about him. With Duanya so close, Su-chen turns his head to the side, feeling nervous and starting to sweat. She senses a strange pressure and opens her eyes, blushing slightly as she asks him about it. On closer inspection, she realizes he's naked and quickly moves away, closing her eyes and gesturing for him to get dressed. Su-chen, scratching his head sheepishly, closes his eyes and explains with a smile that the water was too dirty, hence why he had to strip down. He casually mentions he's off for a quick bath, probably to wash away the embarrassment along with the dirt. Several minutes later, the two go into the bathroom and fill the bathtub with water. They both get in with Su-chen leaning back, placing his hands behind his head and closing his eyes contentedly. He remarks with a smile how comfortable it is and muses that leaving home makes you appreciate being there even more. Duanya blushes, lowering her head and silently staring at her reflection in the water. Standing up, Duanya places her hand on Su-chen's shoulder and he asks if she's awakened her special abilities. With both arms resting on the edges of the bathtub, Su-chen relaxes as Duanya leans in, hands still on his shoulder. Blushing, she asks if he saw how she handled the lampreys. Su-chen closes his eyes and smiles in response. He confesses he didn't see it happen, but he could feel the intensity of her actions and the warmth of her touch. Upon hearing his remark, Duanya gets somewhat surprised and confused. She asks him what temperature he was referring to. Su-chen, with his head resting on his arms, inquires about her special ability in return. In response, Duanya begins to massage his back and explains that her power is a form of mind control. Upon hearing this, Su-chen inquires about her special ability and its potential on food. She begins to rise from her seat, requesting to practice with him. Su-chen, puzzled, opens his eyes slightly, turning his head back with a bemused expression at her request for practice. Just as he observes her intentions, shock overtakes him. She dons a provocative costume, placing a hand on her chest, gazing at Su-chen, announcing her desire to engage in some exercise together. Su-chen turns his body towards her, gripping the edges of the bathtub with both hands, a dark energy swirling around him. He gazes at her in silence, his presence intimidating. Shocked by his aura and unable to influence him with her mind control, she stares at him with wide eyes, wondering if this is his special ability at work. Feeling the overwhelming energy radiating from Su-chen, her expression shifts dramatically to astonishment. She realizes that without his tacit consent, she might have yielded to his pressure. Just as she attempts to flee, Su-chen fixes his gaze on her, a smile playing on his lips, impressed by her remarkable power. He casually asks her what happens next. Just as the moon rises and nightfall approaches, with waves crashing against the hotel, she declares that she wants him to keep practicing hanky-panky until his legs weaken. Looks like she's aiming for a gold medal in the Olympics of romance. The next day, as the sun emerges and the floodwaters calm, someone in a rabbit costume pulls out a gun and starts taking out the remaining mutant lampreys in the hotel, tearing them to pieces. That someone turns out to be Doomsday, with Su-chen by her side, guiding her aim and offering advice on concentration and staying calm before shooting. Looks like even mutant lampreys can't resist a rabbit with a deadly aim. Doomsday blushes and asks him why he isn't at the Science and Technology University instead of wasting time here teaching her how to shoot. They stand on the hotel roof as he places his hands in his pockets and starts moving away from her. Heading towards the door, he gives her until noon to familiarize herself with her powers and her aim, then casually inquires if she's from the medical university. Doomsday, holding the gun with one hand, responds affirmatively and inquires if something is happening. Su-chen halts, turns his head towards her, and with a calm expression explains that she needs to come with him. It's not every day a rabbit-costumed sharpshooter gets summoned for an urgent mission. Several hours later, the water level of the Great Flood stabilizes and a yacht begins sailing through the city. This yacht belongs to none other than Su-chen. Doomsday, dressed in a bunny costume, asks if it's a bad idea to wear such clothing while being outside. Su-chen assures her that nothing will happen, as even without the costume, no one would be able to do anything to her. Doomsday, behind the wheel, steers the yacht, looking like the most seductive captain to ever navigate floodwaters. With a worried look, she asks Su-chen if he has ever been to the Science and Technology University. Su-chen, sitting behind her with one leg crossed over the other knee, rests one hand on the seat while holding a glass of wine in the other. He brings the glass of wine closer, staring at her intently with a serious gaze. He explains that he came to the university to see a friend but doesn't know if he survived. With one hand on the yacht's steering wheel, she places the other under her chest, looking at Su-chen. Blushing, she reassures him not to worry, as people with good luck have their own destiny. The yacht races through the waves at high speed. Several minutes later, Doomsday glances to the side and informs Su-chen that they have arrived at the University of Science and Technology. What used to be a university is now a fortress, inundated with floodwater. The entrance is blocked by two giant wooden doors as their yacht approaches. It's like arriving at a medieval castle, except with less knights and more mutant lampreys. At that moment, Su-chen turns his head to the side with a murderous look, sensing something bad is about to happen. His suspicions are confirmed when someone watching the door peeks out, draws a rifle, and starts shooting at the yacht. Luckily, Su-chen reacts in time. He approaches Doomsday, placing a protective hand over her head and standing in front of her. The bullets begin to hit him and the yacht, but he remains steadfast. He turns his head towards the shooter, maintaining a silent, intense gaze as if daring the shooter to try harder. It's not every day you see someone turn into a bulletproof shield with such style. The man guarding the door stares at Su-chen, demanding to know who he is and what he is doing there. With his eyes shining, Su-chen stares back, recalling that this is the same Science and Technology University where the mutated Rat King had emerged in his past life. Stepping forward on the yacht, he puts his hands in his pockets and calmly explains to the man that they are here to join the Federal Bureau of Evolution. He then asks if the guard could open the door and let them in. The man continues to stare at Su-chen, deep in thought. Holding the rifle with one hand, he rests the other on the wooden door. Upon closer inspection, he notices the bunny girl on the yacht. He sticks his tongue out and suggests that he would let her in if she stayed with him tonight, but he's not so generous towards Su-chen. He tells Su-chen to go back where he came from. Just then, Doomsday brings out a plate with delicious food. Closing her eyes and smiling, she asks the man to open the door for the sake of this beefsteak. Sometimes the way to a man's heart or a heavily guarded fortress is through his stomach. Seeing the delicious dish, the man panics and places his hand on the wood. With a surprised look, he confirms that the dish is indeed beefsteak. Instantly, he orders his subordinate, named Lu Tao, to open the gates, prompting him to be quick. He mentions he has not seen the meat in ages. Lu Tao, somewhat surprised, looks at him with confusion, but accepts the order without complaint. Slowly, the large wooden doors of the university begin to open, revealing the path forward. It seems even fortified gates can't resist the allure of a well-cooked meal. Seeing this, Doomsday returns to the steering wheel of the yacht and navigates inside. Once they reach the interior, the guard from the door descends and orders them to stop the boat, demanding the beefsteak. After making his request, he instructs Lu Tao to escort them inside, intending to enjoy the beefsteak all to himself. Duanya's eyes sparkle with amusement as she looks at the man and can't help but smile. It seems her culinary skills are making quite the impression. On the other hand, Su Chen remains silent with a serious expression. In reality, the beefsteak dish is nothing more than a monster's hand. The man grabs the hand eagerly with both hands, drooling as he marvels at its incredible aroma. Driven by his love for this delicious beefsteak, he decides to allow them entry. He adds that they'll have to send the guy to the laboratory another time. Lu Tao leads Su Chen and Duanya through the base, and they follow him silently. Ahead of them, they see two dying men sitting with their backs against the wall, a starving man lying on the floor and a little girl wearing a cape. Lu Tao, visibly sweating, turns his head back and sincerely explains to them that since they will all be living in the base from now on, it's important to support each other. He adds that the ground floor is designated for the elderly, children, and other members of society who are struggling. Lu Tao decides to take Su Chen and Duanya upstairs to find a clean room. Su Chen, hands in his pockets, and Duanya, attentively listening, follow Lu Tao without interrupting. Suddenly, the little girl bumps into Lu Tao and falls to the ground. Su Chen turns towards her with a stern gaze, asking what's wrong and if she's unable to walk. Duanya quickly approaches, gently picking the girl up in her arms, ready to offer help. Placing one hand behind the girl's back and the other on top of her arms, Duanya looks at her and realizes she is extremely hungry and low on energy. She asks the girl where her family is. The girl's stomach growls loudly. She places her hands on her belly, closes her eyes, grits her teeth, and starts screaming in pain. She explains to Duanya that her family went in search of food and hasn't returned yet. Upon hearing this, Duanya takes out a bag of bread from her pocket and approaches the girl, offering it to her. The little girl sweats nervously, opens one eye, and gazes at the bread, her mouth watering. Despite her hunger, she hesitates to accept it because eating the bread would mean her rabbit sister would go hungry too. Su Chen, positioned behind them, extends a reassuring hand and calmly assures the girl that her rabbit sister won't go hungry. Duanya, catching the interaction, can't help but steal glances at the girl, her cheeks tinting with a hint of embarrassment. Meanwhile, the starving little girl fixes a skeptical gaze on Su Chen. She challenges him, asking with a mix of curiosity and hunger, what kind of person never experiences hunger? Duanya, cradling the girl in her arms, starts to sweat with worry, fearing that if the girl doesn't eat soon, she might perish from hunger. Su Chen, observing the scene with a mix of amusement and compassion, looks down at the ground, a small smile playing on his lips. With a theatrical flourish, he extends his hands, conjuring a hot pot out of thin air. In a teasing tone, he declares that questioning his character is fair game, but his strength is beyond doubt. In a matter of seconds, he produces not just the hot pot, but also several plates overflowing with food and sets them down on a nearby wooden box. After producing the hot pot and food, Su Chen playfully crouches down, eyeing the girl with a grin, and quips that Duanya is his girl, and she will never go hungry. Duanya, taken aback by his cheeky remark, awkwardly looks away, wondering if she missed something in the menu of romance. Lu Tao, standing behind Su Chen, is visibly shocked and stares at the magically appearing food with wide eyes, muttering about how a hot pot just doesn't pop up out of thin air every day. The little girl, equally astonished by the sudden feast, blurts out to Su Chen that she wants to be his woman too if it means never missing a meal. Hearing this unexpected declaration, Duanya couldn't hide her surprise. She glanced sideways, a puzzled expression crossing her face as she wondered what was going on. No wonder she was jealous. However, Duanya offers the girl a piece of bread, gently reminding her that children shouldn't say silly things. She encourages her to eat quickly. The girl, who hasn't eaten in days, begins devouring the bread, tears of gratitude streaming down her face as she feels like she's in heaven. The aroma of the food attracts several men who approach in disbelief. They can't fathom someone cooking and enjoying a meal in this unlikely place. Upon hearing their voices, Su Chen turns around, his expression surprised as he tries to identify the approaching men. 3 armed individuals move closer, one with black hair brandishing a dagger, showing it off to his companions. Another man with dreadlocks kicks a nearby wooden barrel forcefully. He commands the others to leave, labeling them as lowlifes, and questions if they are unaware that hoarding food is prohibited, as if he's auditioning for the role of grumpy cafeteria monitor. The man with the eye patch, clearly the leader, strides forward with an air of authority, explaining the protocol that all goods must be delivered before they can be exchanged for contribution points. Meanwhile, the other shady characters in the vicinity quickly scatter like cockroaches in a lit kitchen, visibly trembling with fear. Eyeing Su Chen intently, the leader recalls that no food exchanges have been reported in recent days. He demands to know who's been breaking the rules, while the other two thugs just stared in awkward silence like they suddenly developed a deep appreciation for mime. Seeing the men approaching, the little girl, clutching her piece of bread, moves behind Duanya and closes her eyes, trembling with fear. Duanya, seated on the floor, extends a reassuring hand and calmly assures the little girl that she'll ensure everything goes smoothly. After this declaration, Duanya glances at Su Chen. He turns to her, with a serious look nods something to her. Duanya rises to her feet, stretches out her arm, and eyes the men quizzically, asking if they aren't hungry after all that talk. Just then, Su Chen conjures food from the system's inventory, items appearing near Duanya's hand. She calmly informs them that she had prepared these offerings for their benefit. Upon witnessing what materialized before them, their leader is visibly taken aback, his expression a mix of shock and confusion as he wonders what's happening. With a determined gaze, Duanya instructs them to enjoy the food. 4 plates of meat materialize on the wooden box. Seeing the abundance of meat, the 3 men eagerly approach, their mouths watering at the delicious aroma. They confidently inform the other lowlifes to stay put, asserting that all this food rightfully belongs to them. They gaze longingly at the food before them, drooling as if they discovered the gates of culinary heaven. With eager hands, they seize the meat and devour it with a passion that suggests they've never tasted anything so divine. Each bite is a symphony of flavors, evoking tears of joy at the familiar sensation, though they might just be tearing up because it's that good, or maybe because they finally found their true love in a plate of meat. The leader's eyes fixate on Duanya, pointing at her with his finger, while a mouthful of food can't stifle his grin. He affectionately labels her a good girl and plans her punishment for later tonight, though whether it's for her or for him is unclear. He further declares that Su Chen, having broken the rules, is going to face an even more severe punishment. Duanya crosses her arms defiantly, casting a silent, skeptical gaze at the men around her. Meanwhile, Su Chen, hands nonchalantly tucked in his pockets, appears bewildered as he eyes the men with a mix of surprise. He can't help but ponder what kind of punishment awaits him. With a commanding stare, the leader signals his subordinates to bring them out, referring to some kind of monsters. Upon hearing the command, the men struggle to bring out 2 heavily chained figures, their strength barely sufficient for the task. Just as they approach our Jigachad, aka Su Chen, he maintains a stoic silence, fixating on their leader with an unreadable expression. The 2 imposing figures are unveiled, their chains rattling ominously. The leader decrees Su Chen's punishment, a brutal life or death showdown. Either he defeats these formidable adversaries or he faces the chilling alternative, death at their hands. Without a hint of sweat on his brow, Su Chen turns his gaze towards the approaching figures, scrutinizing them with keen interest. Peering closer, he recognizes a striking familiarity in these 2 men. He wonders if they are the same 2 brothers he rescued and interrogated earlier in the flood. The girl, who is munching on a piece of bread while hiding behind Duanya's leg, peeks out to see who these 2 men are. On closer inspection, she realizes they are her older brother and second brother. Realizing they are about to engage in a fight to the death, the girl panics and starts crying. She tries to intervene, but Duanya stops her, placing a hand on her head. With a confused look, Duanya asks if those 2 are her brothers. The girl cries even harder and tries to go help them, but Duanya grabs her by the waist. With both arms, the girl reaches out towards them, calling the men bad guys and ordering them to release her brothers. Duanya, like a concerned babysitter at a chaotic birthday party, instructs the little girl not to go near her brothers, noting they don't seem to be in their right minds. The man with dreadlocks, eating meat like a monkey, tells the girl her brothers ruined the mission and couldn't obtain contribution points as compensation, so they have been sentenced to death. Their leader, also eating like a monkey, starts smiling and says he has captured these brothers to have fun with them. He takes a bite of a chicken thigh and starts staring at Su Chen, probably wondering if Su Chen is also on the menu. The leader didn't expect them to actually know each other, and for him, this makes things even more interesting. He decides that if they lose the duel, he will let the little sister join her brothers. He plans to throw the girl into the water and feed her to the water ghosts. The 2 brothers, who previously seemed like ordinary people, now look like zombies. Behind Su Chen stands a man with brown hair, tied up with 2 chains. Su Chen gazes at the man seriously, thinking that these 2 brothers seem to have fallen into some kind of frenzied state. He wonders if they have been injected with drugs. Their leader takes another chicken thigh, takes a bite, and while munching, stares at Su Chen. He shouts for his men to release the chains. Upon hearing his command, the men release the chains, freeing the 2 brothers. The bald man opens his mouth wide, extends his hands towards Su Chen, and starts running towards him, preparing to attack. Looks like he's hungry for a fight and for some chicken thighs, maybe. Su Chen simply turns his head towards the bald man and silently watches him, pondering his next move. While he's distracted, the other man tries to launch a surprise attack, but luck isn't on his side. In the blink of an eye, Su Chen turns around and with a killer look, delivers a strong blow to his neck. The bald man attempts to attack again, but Su Chen calmly turns around looking at him with unwavering composure. With a swift and effortless motion, Su Chen delivers a powerful slap, sending the bald man flying within seconds. The two brothers lose consciousness, their bodies collapsing to the ground near Su Chen's feet. Upon seeing her two brothers knocked out, the girl panics, tears streaming down her face. She tries to rush to their aid, but Duanya holds her back firmly with both arms to prevent her from intervening. The girl looks at Su Chen with a worried expression. Su Chen reassures her that nothing will happen to her brothers. Meanwhile, the bodies of the two brothers lie on the ground. Su Chen looks at them silently, contemplating the situation. Their leader, who is eating like a monkey, is amazed to see Su Chen finish off the brothers so quickly. A drop of sweat falls from his forehead as he looks at Su Chen with surprise. Initially thinking he wasted two men, he dismisses it, considering them useless anyway. Wiping his mouth with his hand, he stares at Su Chen with an arrogant smile. He explains that he's in a good mood today, ordering them to obediently hand over all their supplies. In return, he promises to pretend this never happened. Su Chen turns towards him, staring into his eyes with a calm expression. He asks why they have to hand over the supplies. Upon hearing this, the man wearing a crest stands up, giving Su Chen a serious look. He asks if Su Chen is a newcomer, explaining that according to the rules, anyone entering this science and technology university must comply with Grand Liu's rules to avoid problems and eliminate parasites. Seems like even in the midst of chaos, there are rules to follow. The leader, standing next to him with a chicken bone in hand, smiles and tells Su Chen that what his subordinate said is correct. They don't keep idle people here. If Su Chen wants to stay, he needs to earn contribution points. One must invest resources and search for items to exchange for contribution points. It seems like they're running a tight ship with chicken bones and contribution points as the currency of choice. Su Chen quickly realizes that contribution points function similarly to money, but clearly benefit those who establish the rules more. He calmly gazes at the leader and explains that the last ration of supplies they have is what they are currently eating. Just then, a fat man appears behind them with an ominous look, advising Su Chen that if he wants to earn contribution points, it would be better for him to work for him. Looks like the job offers in this world are as subtle as a sledgehammer. Hearing his voice, the expressions of the leader and the man with the crest change drastically. They start sweating and panicking uncontrollably. The leader turns his head back and, with a look filled with terror, immediately recognizes the man as Captain Go. It seems like Captain Gu's reputation precedes him. Upon seeing Gu, Duanya couldn't help but be amazed. She looks at him with a surprised gaze, wondering where this guy had come from and what was happening. Su Chen simply observes Gu calmly, remaining silent. One of Captain Gu's subordinates, a man missing several teeth, bites on a wooden and chain-made muzzle. He and others are carrying a throne on their shoulders, atop which Captain Gu sits in a wooden chair. It seems Captain Gu travels in style like a pharaoh of the ancient Egypt. Next to the chair, a woman is seated, looking quite terrified. Captain Gu, with both hands resting on the arms of the chair, begins to stare at Su Chen. He asks Su Chen to work for him, offering accommodation, food, a good salary, and contribution points. At that moment, one of the men holding the throne stumbles and falls to the ground, causing the legs of the others and the throne to start shaking. It seems even Captain Gu's offer comes with a side of shaky stability. Captain Gu stares at the man with a murderous look and remains silent. Suddenly, he grabs his spear and forcefully throws it towards the man, piercing his chest. The man opens his mouth and screams in agony. Seeing this, Duanya is shocked. She looks at Captain Gu with a surprised expression, wondering what is happening. It seems Captain Gu takes drastic measures to maintain order and discipline. Su Chen is also in shock, not knowing who Captain Gu is. Gu puts his hand under his chin and smiles. He explains that, as they have seen, he is very short on people, and they are just in time to take the place of the man he just killed. He then especially offers Duanya to come with him, enticing her with a can of canned meat and the luxury of eating instant noodles. Well, it seems Captain Gu knows how to sweeten the deal even in the midst of unsettling events. After saying this, Captain Gu asks Duanya what she thinks about his offer. He grabs the woman next to him by the head, sits her on his lap, and stares at her intently with a smile. He explains to everyone that it's now the end of the world and industrial production has long ceased. He had invested a fortune in her, but now she was starting to bore him. The leader, mid-bite, looks at Su Chen and urges him not to reject Captain Gu's invitation. He advises Su Chen not to underestimate Captain Gu's generosity. The man next to him starts sweating nervously, feeling relieved because with Captain Gu focusing on a new woman, they can now enjoy the previous one. It seems like the crew around Captain Gu has their own unique way of navigating these unsettling situations. Upon closer inspection, Captain Gu notices they are eating meat. He stares at them with a penetrating gaze and asks what they are eating. The leader and the other man quickly turn away, visibly sweating and panicking. They realize they have been so distracted enjoying the meat that they forgot secretly eating meat without Captain Gu's knowledge is a serious crime. Looks like they've just been caught with their forks in the meat pie. Upon remembering their offense, the three prostrate themselves before Captain Gu. The leader, sweating profusely, looks at the ground and apologizes. He assures Captain Gu they would never dare to repeat such an act and begs for another chance. He promises that in the future, any food they have will be given to Captain Gu first. Captain Gu turns his head sharply, looking at them with an aggressive gaze. He orders them to be quiet, complaining that he's suffocating from the smell. Captain Gu asks them if they had been eating shit and then orders them to stop talking and leave as quickly as possible. Duanya couldn't help but feel somewhat confused and began to wonder what was happening. Su Chen begins to stare at Captain Gu, quickly realizing that not only has Captain Gu discovered Duanya's power, but it also hasn't affected him. The leader and the two men stand up, somewhat confused. Upon hearing Captain Gu's words, they try to explain that what they had eaten was meat. However, as they begin to look closely at the food they had just eaten, their expressions change drastically. They are terrified and wonder what is happening. The leader opens his mouth, trying to vomit due to the pain in his stomach. The three quickly clutch their stomachs, turn their backs, and rush towards the bathrooms. They can't hold it anymore and don't understand why their stomachs suddenly hurt so much. It seems their meal has taken an unexpected and painful turn. Just as they moved away, Captain Gu looks at them and can't help but wonder how he ended up with such stupid subordinates. He feels exhausted and thinks that one day they'll finally get rid of them for good. It seems Captain Gu has high standards and low tolerance for incompetence. Su Chen stares at Captain Gu, finding him strangely devoid of supernatural power. Instead, Gu gives off an aura of strength and influence, which seems to have awakened the others from Duanye's mental control. Su Chen isn't sure what kind of person Gu is, but judging his subordinates, he concludes that Gu cannot be anything good. It looks like Captain Gu's presence alone carries weight. Captain Gu approaches Su Chen, looking at him seriously, and asks what he thinks about his previous proposal. Hearing his voice, Su Chen snaps out of his trance, turns his head towards Captain Gu, and calmly thinks that killing him now would only complicate the mission. He decides it's better to first find the mutant rat and then figure out what to do with Captain Gu. Smart move, prioritizing the mission over personal disputes. He begins to look at Captain Gu with a dismissive expression and tells him he's not interested. Captain Gu laughs upon hearing this and assures him not to worry, as he knows someday they will come looking for him. After saying this, Captain Gu decides to leave, instructing Lu Tao to step forward and take the front position and carry his throne. Hearing Captain Gu's order, Lu Tao quickly runs towards him and acknowledges with an understood. Taking the front position, Lu Tao then helps carry Captain Gu's throne as they depart. Su Chen starts looking at them with a serious expression and remains silent, lost in thought. Duanya turns towards him, catching his attention, and apologizes. She explains that Captain Gu's mental strength is quite strong, which is why her special ability had no effect on him. Hearing her voice, Su Chen snaps out of his trance, turns his head towards Duanya, and looks at the ground. He reassures her not to worry, explaining that these guys hadn't died after eating the aquatic monster corpses, indicating there's something strange about them. He decides to be cautious. Suddenly, someone approaches from behind and explains that now that they've offended the members of the Royal Guard, they won't be forgiven. It seems trouble is brewing from multiple directions. Hearing this, Su Chen slightly turns his head back and sees a man approaching from behind. A gray-haired man with a bandaged head. The man removes his hood with both hands, stares at Su Chen seriously, and asks him to come with him. Immediately upon seeing that the man knew him, Su Chen couldn't help but be somewhat surprised. He looks at the man with a calm gaze and asks why he is helping them. The man points at himself with his finger and introduces himself as Miao, and he is the Tianyu's roommate. He explains that they had last seen each other when Su Chen had come to school. It looks like unexpected connections are surfacing just when they're needed most. At the same time, Captain Gu returns to his lair, resting both hands on the chair's armrests with a serious look. He orders Lu Tao to keep an eye on Duanya and Su Chen, ensuring they don't escape. Lu Tao, visibly exhausted, approaches him and gasps for breath, asking what Captain Gu has in mind. Captain Gu sticks out his tongue and starts smiling, amused by thoughts of Duanya. He begins imagining her and explains to Lu Tao that in the apocalypse, it's rare to come across women as attractive as her. Captain Gu certainly has his priorities and his peculiar ways of expressing them. Several hours later, Miao leads them to another part of the university. They arrive at the central building connected by wooden bridges. In one of the rooms, they find a drip setup. Though they don't have many reserve medicines, they have enough. They bring the girl's brothers to this room, lay them on the floor on top of a blanket, and connect the drip to them. It looks like help is finally on the way for the little girl's brothers, thanks to Mio's resourcefulness. One of the little girl's brothers seemed to be clenching his teeth tightly and sweating. Duanya sits on the floor next to him with one hand resting on her knee and the other on his chest. She turns her head to the side and with a serious look explains to the girl that they are no longer in mortal danger, at least for now. The little girl nearby couldn't help but feel happy and relieved. She thanked Duanya, expressing that she was the best. In the room where they were, several other people were present, some sitting, others sleeping. Suchen, with both hands in his pockets, approached Miao and asked if all the students now live here. Miao, standing next to little girl's brothers, answered affirmatively and added that regardless of gender, everyone who was alive sought refuge here. It seems the university has become a sanctuary in these troubled times. Miao stares at Suchen seriously and explains that because Brother Qin Yu used to help everyone, this place is also considered their territory from the field department. Suchen looks at him calmly and asks which field department he is referring to. At that moment, someone with a rifle resting on their shoulder appears and explains that their field department is very strong. Even if they encounter difficulties, they are confident they can face them head-on. With a serious expression, Suchen begins to wonder about the identity of this new arrival. The man gets closer with a rifle on his shoulder, several knives strapped to his back, wearing a diving mask, and clad in sturdy armor. He asks Suchen if he's interested in joining them. Miao wastes no time introducing this man as Tian Yu. Tian Yu approaches Suchen, extending both hands towards him with a surprised look. Suchen, with one hand in his pocket, looks at Tian Yu, feeling somewhat confused. Tian Yu doesn't take long to recognize Suchen. He quickly takes off the diving mask, his mouth open in surprise and disbelief. He can't believe that it's really Suchen standing before him. Tian Yu jumps towards Suchen, giving him a hug. He closes his eyes, feeling relieved as he had thought Suchen had died. He didn't expect him to still be alive. Suchen also feels happy. It had been a while since he had seen Tian Yu. For them, it's rare to see each other again. Suchen decides to have some drinks, celebrating his return to the field department and the chance to spend a few days with Tian Yu. While sweat falls from his forehead, Tian Yu turns his head back with a surprised look, wondering what's happening behind them. There stands Duanya. Upon seeing her, Tian Yu is dumbfounded and starts sweating even more. He had seen her before. She was the legend of a University of Science and Technology, known as the Cold Goddess Duanya. It seems Duanya's reputation precedes her even in these tumultuous times. She starts walking towards them, hands behind her back, adopting a seductive pose. Duanya explains that these things of the past hold no use in the present. Tian Yu panics, mouth open in surprise, pointing at her with his finger. With a confused look, he asks Miao how it's possible that the legendary goddess has appeared here in front of them, dressed as a bunny. Miao covers his ears with both fingers, sweating nervously as he gazes at her. He asks if she really is Duanyu, the older sister from the Faculty of Medicine. It doesn't surprise him that she's so beautiful, after all. Duanyu approaches Suchen, placing her hand on his chest and looking into his eyes with a loving gaze. She starts to blush and explains that she wants to change clothes because dressing like this in front of the students is too embarrassing for her. Suchen puts his hand on her waist, looks at her with a smile, thinking it's definitely time for her to change clothes. Looks like fashion advice and romantic tension are in the air. Miao and Tian Yu can't help but feel jealous. Miao clenches both fists tightly, asking angrily why Suchen is hugging the goddess. Tian Yu starts bleeding from his nose, furious that the goddess Duanya is with Suchen. However, Tian Yu leads them to the door of another room, leaving his backpack on the floor. He gestures towards the door, apologizing for the mess inside. He tells them they can sit wherever they want and suggests Duanya can change clothes in that room. She starts approaching the room and thanks him. Seeing how luxurious the room is, Suchen can't help but be somewhat surprised. Miao turns his back on them, looking around with a surprised look, feeling envious at how Tian Yu has used his contribution points. Looks like jealousy and luxury are in the air. Perhaps a contribution point spending spree is in order. Shen Yu leans against the wall, putting his hand under his chin, remembering they didn't bring any luggage. He wonders where she'll get clothes to change into. Su Chen changes the subject, asking seriously if Tian Yu's missions are usually dangerous. Shen Yu starts touching his mask with his finger, asking which mission isn't dangerous. He mentions that they are very lucky, as they are clean and it is noticeable that they haven't gone through the trials of the apocalypse. Shen Yu asks them to stay and join his team so he can take care of them. Opening his eyes, he reveals that even a doctor as excellent as Duan Yu won't need to scavenge for food. She'll just be attending to the wounded. He stares at Su Chen, deciding to remind them of something. He advises them to stop showing off in the future. He can't believe Su Chen let her dress like a sexy bunny, wondering what he was thinking. Chen Yu also reminds him they're in the apocalypse, after all. Su Chen slightly turns his head back and calmly assures him not to worry, promising to take good care of her. Chen Yu approaches him and gives a gentle punch on the head, reminding him to keep his word. Chen Yu reminds Su Chen about their high school days where he was more familiar with being a target than a hero. Back then, courage wasn't his strong suit. It was more like hiding behind potted plants at prom. It was Tian Yu who stepped up and chased those guys away. At the same time, Du Wenye enters the room and starts shedding her clothes. Chen Yu reveals to Su Chen that Captain Gu has a knack for turning romantic pursuits into tragedies, especially for women as stunning as Du Wenye. According to Tian Yu, Captain Gu is relentless in his pursuits and is not going to back down anytime soon, like a persistent salesperson who won't stop pitching even after you firmly said no. Just as Du Wenye peels off her bunny costume, a figure sneaks up behind her, wielding a knife like she's auditioning for a thriller movie. Cue dramatic music. It's none other than Now, the slave girl Captain Go. She holds the knife to Du Wenye's throat with the authority of someone who means business and has probably watched too many spy flicks for her own good. Du Wenye, wide-eyed with terror, demands to know who she is and what she intends to do. Now casually places a hand on her chest, leans in with a mischievous grin and spills the beans. Captain Guo requested her presence to help with arrangements and accommodations. With a playful wink, Now assures Du Wenye that she's simply not cut out for these losers. Du Wenye starts to get a bit nervous, but she quickly tries to reassure Now, casually mentioning that there's plenty of room for everyone. Meanwhile, Now, with a calm demeanor, points out that they can't avoid the trip because Captain Gu insists on having her along, casually touching her abdomen to emphasize the point. Du Wenye activates her power, her eyes gleaming with determination as she firmly states her decision not to leave. Just as her power intensifies, Now begins to feel its effects, her own eyes start to gleam, and she nervously breaks into a sweat, realizing she might be in for a tough argument. Du Wenye gives Now the order to her to let go. Upon hearing the order, Now swiftly moves the knife away from Du Wenye's neck, stepping back with a bewildered expression. She can't help but feel a sense of confusion washing over her, as she starts to question what's happening. Du Wenye places one hand under her chest, then turns to face Now with a penetrating gaze. Despite struggling to fully control Now with her power, she manages to hold her in place temporarily. Now stands frozen, staring at the ground without making a single move. Taking advantage of the moment, Du Wenye heads towards the door, deciding to leave the rest to Su Chen. However, just as she moves, Now begins to stir. She readies the knife, preparing to launch an attack. She tightly grips the knife, but instead of attacking, Du Wenye now stabs it into her own hand. The intense pain causes her to grit her teeth tightly, and she lets out a scream of agony. Du Wenye turns around and is shocked to see Nao's actions. She can't believe that Nao has chosen to stab her own hand, using the pain to snap herself out of the mind control. Nao advances towards Du Wenye with a determined look, ready to settle the score. Gripping the knife tightly in one hand, she shoves Du Wenye against the wall with her elbow like she's auditioning for a WWE match. She locks eyes with Du Wenye, teeth clenched in determination, poised to strike. With a serious expression, she warns Du Wenye that she nearly fell into her trap and muses aloud about how strange Du Wenye truly is. Du Wenye starts sweating, visibly worried that things are taking a bad turn. Just as she's feeling the heat, someone knocks on the door, asking what all the commotion is about and why there's so much noise, mistaking it for a wardrobe malfunction. Nao swiftly covers Du Wenye's mouth to silence her, then turns her attention to the door with a grim expression, realizing the situation is escalating. With no response from inside, the person outside decides to enter the room. Seconds later, Su Chen breaks down the door. Nao releases Du Wenye and shifts her attention to Su Chen, wearing a serious expression as she questions his intentions. Gathering her resolve, she advances towards Su Chen with a determined look, prepared to confront him head-on. As Nao slowly advances, Su Chen remains motionless, not making a single move. Just then, Tian Yu appears, looking surprised, and urges Su Chen to be careful. Upon hearing the name Su Chen, Nao's expression changes drastically. She is visibly shocked and starts sweating, unsure of what is happening. As Nao gets closer, she locks eyes with Su Chen. In silence, she quickly recognizes him, and her jaw drops in disbelief. Sweat beads on her forehead as she processes the realization. It's him. Within moments, fear fills her eyes. Nao's memory flashed back to the horrifying incident at the engineering university. She recalled how the monstrous Su Chen had slaughtered everyone with his razor-sharp claws. Gripping their leader by the neck, he stared into his eyes with an intense gaze and a sinister smile, and it teared him apart. It didn't take long for Now to realize that the man before her was no ordinary person. He was a demon. Suchen adopts an offensive stance, locking eyes with Now intensely, ready to strike. Despite Nao's own history of violence, her instincts warn her that attacking him would mean certain death. Trembling with fear, she realizes she must find a way to prevent this outcome. Chen Yu steps forward, placing his hand in front of Su Chen to shield him from Nao's attack. Unexpectedly, Nao's reaction surprises everyone. Instead of attacking, she drops to the ground, placing both hands on the floor, bowing her head in submission before Su Chen, prostrating herself. This unexpected display leaves Tian Yu in shock, wondering what has just transpired. Su Chen remains unmoved, gazing at the ground in silence. Duan Ya, observing this scene, becomes perplexed. With a puzzled expression, she wonders why Now was acting this way and what might be happening between them. Her confusion is reaching Sherlock Holmes levels. She's unable to solve the mystery of why Now suddenly turned into a floor enthusiast. As Now crawls towards Su Chen, with both legs and hands on the ground, she gazes into his eyes and addresses him as master, pleading for punishment. Chen Yu starts to sweat nervously, glancing back with confusion, wondering why she's calling Su Chen master. Meanwhile, Su Chen stands with his hands casually in his pockets, emitting a powerful purple aura. With a serious expression, Tian Yu questions Now about who her actual master is, clearly thrown off by the unusual scene unfolding before him. I hope that you liked today's video, and if you did, hit that like button, as today's like goal is 1,500 likes. Comment part 4 down below for the next part. Also, consider subscribing with the notification bell on to get notified as soon as a new video drops onto the channel. You can also join the channel to support me financially and watch videos before public release. I'll meet you in the next video. Until then, thanks for watching.